Chapter 1324. Get rid of him. After a casual command, Hyojin didn't stop and walked toward the battlefield. Yes. The four homunculus bowed slightly. They didn't question Suijin's order at all, as if Uchiha Madara's towering Susanoo in the distance didn't exist at all. And the complete Susanoo, Uchiha was surprised. I don't even have the qualification to be defeated by you? For a moment, he thought that he had misheard. His life was not smooth. There were confusion, setbacks, and unforgettable defeats, but no matter what, no one has ever despised him so much. In his heart, his name, Uchiha Madara, is enough to represent everything. Even Naruto Senju, who was known as the god of ninja, when he faced him, he had to take him seriously. Dare to be so arrogant in front of me, Madara Uchiha, you are the first. Immediately, Uchiha Madara recovered from the surprise and snorted. Not far away, the 4 generations of Kazekage, who was lying on the ground, looked at the scene in front of them and said, What's going on? The members of Amatsukami are all rebellious, so it's impossible for the homunculus to obey the orders of my Naruto, and it's impossible for them to be so respectful to Naruto. This was simply unimaginable. The 3 generations seemed to think of something and looked at Naruto 3 generations angrily. Damn, what is the relationship between Mai and Amatsukami? At this time, do you still want to continue to hide? Amatsukami rescued Mai many times and only contacted Mai. These abnormal behaviors have already aroused the suspicion of the 3 generations of Tsukuha. It's just that Amatsukami is too strong, it's stronger than the 5 great ninja villages, so he dispelled his doubts about Mai, and now the scene in front of him can't help but arouse his doubts again. Not far away, the seriously injured 4 generations laying also looked at Naruto 3 generations. His face was shocked by the scene in front of him and annoyed by Mai. Obviously, no matter who it is, as long as they see the respectful attitude of the Homusubi of Amatsukami in front of Konoha's 5th Hokage, they can conclude that there must be some deep connection between Amatsukami and Konoha. The 3 generations Naruto who fell to the side at this moment was no less surprised than the other Kages. Hyojin, who has been in a state of uncontact, suddenly appeared. This is a very strange thing, and now the scene in front of him appeared, so he was surprised and suspicious. But when he was about to ask, he looked carefully and found that Hyojin in the distance turned out to be a dirt body. In an instant, all the doubts in his mind were suppressed. The appearance of the dirt body means that Hyojin, the 5th Naruto who has been lost for a long time, is really dead, so now the one controlling Hyojin, whether it is Hyojin's own consciousness or the one who performed the dirt body reincarnation, he can't identify. Almost at the same time, the other Kages also found out that Hyojin is a dirt body. The reason why they didn't find out at the first moment was that these Kages on the battlefield were all seriously injured at this moment, and before Hyojin arrived, they even started to lose consciousness. So after a careful observation, they finally found out the fact that Hyojin is a dirt body. Mai's 5th generation is dead? Various thoughts surged into the minds of the few of them at once. The homunculus of Amatsukami bowed to Mai's 5th Naruto, and Mai's 5th Naruto is a dead person who was reincarnated by the dirt body reincarnation. This scene was too much information, so much so that they were a little confused and couldn't figure it out for a while. Feeling the eyes of everyone in the field, Hyojin didn't explain anything and didn't stay. He hurried here mainly for the 3-tailed beast in Yagura's body. After all, the 3-tailed beast is a good source of chakra, which is helpful for his ritual. But now that the 3-tailed beast has been taken away by Akatsuki, he naturally doesn't need to stay here. As for explaining to everyone, he is neither interested nor cares. If the following ritual failed, no matter how much he tried to explain now, it would all be useless nonsense. But if the ritual succeeded, and he was lucky enough to obtain the undying and indestructible bloodline succession net, then what did it matter whether he explained or not? His fate has always been in his own hands. No need for other people's understanding. No need for other people's approval. Seeing that Hyojin directly ignored him, the proud Uchiha smiled angrily. Well, then let me see if you have the qualification to be arrogant in front of me. After that, Uchiha's face was cold, and he immediately activated Susanoo and slashed at Hyojin, who was leaving. Just at the moment when Uchiha Susanoo slashed down, one of the 4 fire devils immediately projected a dark green phantom from his body. Clang! This phantom expanded rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, it transformed into a tall dark green Susanoo, and in a harsh sound of metal collision, it blocked the long sword of Uchiha's Susanoo. Although this dark green Susanoo wasn't as tall as Madara's Susanoo, it should be able to block a single strike without any problem. And in this process, Hyojin did not look back, even the pace of his departure did not change, and his figure gradually disappeared in the smoke caused by the confrontation between Susanoo and Susanoo. Uchiha's attention at this time was attracted by the dark green Susanoo that blocked his attack in front of him. As for Shinichi, who activated the Susanoo, he curled his lips and said, Hey, don't just casually represent the Uchiha. On the way here, Kuroto heard Uchiha Madara's words, Kage ants, dissipate under the power of the Uchiha clan. Kuroto was shocked. Naruto is also a Kage. This kind of hate words, just listening to it, he was frightened. If it weren't for Hyojin's words, he would have rushed up and fought with Uchiha. Whether he can fight or not, in front of the boss, he has to have a good attitude. Uchiha raised the corner of his mouth. It's a little interesting, I didn't expect that in addition to that kid, there is someone in the Uchiha clan who has awakened Manjikyu Sharingan. The first one is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1325. On the Susanoo, Madara Uchiha looked at Shinichi's Susanoo and chuckled. Young Uchiha, join me and create a great era with me. There is no doubt that Uchiha Madara has a love for talent. Due to the implantation of the first-generation cells, Jishui, Itachi, and Shinichi, who have the power of yin and yang, are no longer Manjikyu Uchiha in the ordinary sense, so Shinichi without the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan can also launch the wings on his back like obsidian, infinitely close to the complete form of Susanoo. Therefore, at this time, the dark green Susanoo in front of Uchiha Madara, although obviously shorter than the blue Susanoo of Uchiha Madara, its power is not small. In the face of Uchiha Madara's solicitation, Shinichi said coldly, Are you kidding me? Uchiha Madara shook his head. You are not my opponent. If you insist on becoming an enemy to stop me, then I can only kill you, although it is a pity. Wow! At this time, a purple phantom was projected from the body of another Homusubi, and then rapidly expanded, and in a flash, it turned into a tall and complete Susanoo with a bow. Obviously, Sasuke was impatient and said directly, Kill us? If you can do it, you can try. As soon as Sasuke's voice fell, another crimson Susanoo with a gourd in his right hand rose from the ground and appeared on the battlefield. Then, the last Homusubi in the field also projected an emerald green phantom, and then the phantom quickly grew and turned into an emerald green Susanoo, with a shield in one hand and a spear in the other. In no time at all, 4 Susanoo with wings on their backs appeared in a row on the battlefield, making the wide and desolate battlefield narrow and crowded. At this moment, the shadows on the battlefield looked at each other in dismay. Jishui's emerald green Susanoo, Shinichi's dark green Susanoo, and even Sasuke's purple Susanoo were all registered in the village. So as soon as the 3 Susanoo appeared, the Kage immediately knew that the 3 wearing the black cloak and the flame pattern mask were Uchiha Shinichi, and Uchiha Sasuke, the 3 Uchiha clan members. But if the 3 Uchiha clan kaleidoscopes were pretending to be Homusubi of Amatsukami, then the crimson Susanoo with a gourd in the middle was a real Homusubi of Amatsukami. It was impossible for it to be a fake. Could it be that the Uchiha clan kaleidoscopes are actually Homusubi of Amatsukami? In an instant, this thought flashed in the mind of the 3 generations of Naruto. Almost subconsciously, he was shocked by his own thought, but after thinking about it, he suddenly felt that it was not impossible. Because there were too many inexplicable things that happened in the last rebellion of the Uchiha clan, especially the 2 Homusubi of Amatsukami. Without making any noise, they easily defeated the 3 Uchiha clan kaleidoscopes, including Patriarch Fuyue, and suppressed the rebellion of the Uchiha clan. Although the incident did not cause widespread suspicion because of the reputation of Amatsukami, 3 generations of Naruto still faintly felt that something was wrong. Because he felt that no matter how strong the Homusubi of Amatsukami was, they should not be able to cause Jishue and Shinichi to be unable to fight back when they were on high alert. If Jishue and Shinichi were Homusubi of Amatsukami, then everything could be explained. If Jishue, Shinichi, and even Sasuke are members of Amatsukami, then who formed Amatsukami? Following the thought just now, 3 generations of Naruto scattered his thoughts. At that time, the person in charge of suppressing the rebellion of the Uchiha clan was none other than Hyojin, who made the 4 Homusubi of Amatsukami respect him. And thinking of the personal friendship between Jishue and Hyojin, as well as the recent abnormal behavior of Hyojin, 3 generations of Naruto suddenly had a creepy guess in his heart. Could it be Kuroto? Soon, 3 generations of Naruto shook his head again. If Kuroto is the founder of Amatsukami, and if he is the strongest shinobi in the shinobi world, Yama, then why did Kuroto die in the first place? At this time, 3 generations of Tsuchikage roared, Sarutobi, shouldn't you give us an explanation? 4 generations Kazekage and 4 generations of Liang also stared at 3 generations of Naruto. If it was because of Hyojin's impure earth form, they couldn't judge for a while whether the 4 Homusubi of Amatsukami were saluting Hyojin, or the impure earth Tensei that controlled Hyojin. But now with the revelation of the identity of 3 Homusubi of the 4 Homusubi, the secret connection between Amatsukami and Mai can't be explained. 3 generations of Naruto opened his mouth but found himself speechless. Just when the Kages were thinking about the matter of Amatsukami, Madara Uchiha was shocked by the scene in front of him. He didn't expect that in addition to Obsidian, there are so many Uchiha who have awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, and although the pupil power of these Uchiha is different, without exception, they all surpass the level of a normal Manjikyu Sharingan. Especially the purple Susanoo, whose size is close to his own. Madara felt a familiar chakra from this Susanoo, as well as the pupil power that made him feel fear. Is this Uchiha's eyes the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan? In doubt, Madara Uchiha's eyes swept to the crimson Susanoo carrying the gourd artifact, and the emerald Susanoo holding the shield. 10 Punches sword, Yata no Kagami? How did they find these 2 artifacts? With Madara Uchiha's knowledge, he naturally recognizes the 2 artifacts that once belonged to Uchiha, the Tenseigan and the Yata no Kagami. So at the same time, his heart is also full of doubt. Because he once traveled in the shinobi world, but he didn't find these 2 artifacts. After recognizing these 2 artifacts, he put away the contempt on his face. He thought that the first Shinichi was already a very good Uchiha, but he never thought that the other 3 Uchiha are stronger than Shinichi. At the same time, there is also a question in his heart. Why do these Uchiha listen to a dead Naruto? The second update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly vote. In addition, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 13:26. Looking at the 4 enemies of Uchiha in front of him, Uchiha couldn't help but recall the Uchiha people who betrayed him when he ran away. This part of the past was so unforgettable. So even in retrospect, he still can't hide the hatred in his heart, so he said coldly, "Since you have made a choice, then all of you will die." After that, Uchiha no longer held back, and immediately urged his Susanoo to launch an attack. Boom! The huge long sword slammed down, and the battlefield was shattered in an instant. Jishui, Itachi, Shinichi, and Sasuke hurriedly urged their respective Susanoo to dodge, and narrowly escaped Uchiha's powerful sword. And the hundreds of meters long sword slashed down, the air wave alone easily created a large sandstorm, causing the whole battlefield to fall into chaos again. In the monstrous smoke and dust, Uchiha murmured to himself, "This ugly ninja world will soon usher in the final peace, no one can stop me." Brush! At this moment, Sasuke's purple Susanoo suddenly spread its wings and flew through the layers of smoke and dust to the sky, and then aimed at Uchiha's Susanoo with a bow. "The undead of the old era, don't come out and make a fool of yourself." The target was so huge, so Sasuke didn't need to aim seriously at all, and he shot an arrow in an instant. Not only was this arrow shot with all his strength, but he also used the two kaleidoscope jutsu technique, Amaterasu, and Earth Life Enhancement, Amaterasu, to attach the black flames of Amaterasu, to the arrow. At the same time, Jishui and Shinichi on the ground also urged their respective Susanoo, and rushed to Uchiha's tall Susanoo. Boom! The incredibly fast arrow shot by Sasuke almost instantly hit Uchiha Madara's Susanoo, making a huge bang. However, the defense power of Madara Uchiha's Susanoo was too terrifying. Although the arrow shot by Sasuke hit, it failed to penetrate it. It only broke part of the front armor of Madara Uchiha's Susanoo, making it unstable and staggering a few steps, causing the earth to shake. However, the black flame of Amaterasu on the arrow spread on Uchiha's Susanoo. Then, Jishui and Shinichi's attacks arrived. Jishui urged his Susanoo to stab his long spear straight into the weak ribs of Uchiha's Susanoo, while Shinichi urged his Susanoo to stab the place where Sasuke's arrow had just hit. "Humph, you want to die." Madara Uchiha snorted coldly. Immediately after, his complete Susanoo stretched out 4 arms, and a long blade appeared on each of the arms. The 4 arms and 4 blades, each on the left and right, respectively greeted Shursui and Shinichi. Suddenly, Jishui and Shinichi were both taken aback. Originally, Uchiha's Susanoo was a 2-handed single sword. Jishui and Shinichi attacked together. It was 2 against 1. But in a flash, Uchiha's Susanoo became 4 hands and 4 swords. Jishui and Shinichi became 2 against 4. In an instant, Uchiha's Susanoo divided into 2 hands and 2 swords, blocking the long spear and sword of Jishui and Shinichi respectively. The other 2 hands and 2 swords slashed to Jishui and Shinichi. Rumble! There was another roar, and the whole earth trembled. The smoke and dust that had just been raised had not yet dissipated, and there were waves of wind and sand, like a sandstorm coming, making the whole battlefield dark. In the flying sand, taking advantage of the gap between the 4 Homasubi besieging Uchiha Madara, the remaining ninjas of the allied forces on the battlefield struggled to evacuate from the battlefield. Among them, 3 generations of Tsukuha, 4 generations of Kazekage, and 4 generations of Lei-Ing quickly gathered together. After a while, 3 generations of Naruto also supported the fainted 4 generations of Mizukage. Yagura and Lei-Ing came out of the wind and sand. Several Kage hurriedly greeted, "How is the Mizukage?" 3 generations of Naruto replied, "He is still alive for the time being." The Kage present knew what would happen to the Jinchuriki who lost his tailed beast, so when they learned that Yagura was still alive, they all showed an unexpected expression. 3 generations of Tsukuha immediately stepped forward to check Yagura's body, and his attention soon fell on the Type 4 biological armor that Yagura was wearing, and he wondered, "Is this the white Zetsu clone of the Akatsuki?" Because the idea of biological armor was derived from the special white Zetsu that Obsidian wore, so at first glance, the biological armor developed by Hyojin does have some similarities with the white Zetsu clone. But as long as you carefully distinguish, you can see that there are obvious differences between the two. Facing the question of 3 generations of Tsukuha, 3 generations of Naruto shook his head. I don't know, but it seems that this thing temporarily saved the Mizukage's life. 4 generations of Kazekage and 4 generations of Lei Ying looked at each other, and then cast a questioning look at Naruto of 3 generations of Naruto. Obviously, they don't believe that 3 generations of Naruto wouldn't recognize the item that 5th Naruto Hyuujin took out from the ninja bag in front of everyone. But now is obviously not the time to worry about this, so after confirming that Yagura's life was temporarily not in danger, everyone's attention was focused on the battlefield in the distance. At this time, 4 generations of Kazekage raised his arm to block the oncoming wind and sand, and said to several Kage that came to his side, "These Uchiha, can they still be regarded as ninjas?" 4 generations of Lei Ying's face was gloomy when he heard this. The battle between the Susanoo of the Uchiha clan, even if it's just a simple slash, has the power to shake the earth. This is completely beyond the scope of a normal ninja, and in terms of destructive power alone, even the Kage like them can't compare to it. 3 generations of Tsukuha tried to look into the distance. It's just that the smoke and dust on the battlefield, and the wind was getting stronger and stronger, completely obscuring his vision. He couldn't see the details of the Susanoo battle in the distance. He could only roughly estimate the situation by looking at the vague figures of the behemoths in the wind and the continuous roars in his ears, and the violent tremors under his feet. In the face of such a battle, as Kage, let alone intervene, it's so difficult for them to even observe. This reality makes them depressed and embarrassed. After a while, 3 generations of Tsukuha faintly sighed. Sure enough, using Uchiha to deal with Uchiha is the best way. 4 generations of Kazekage and 4 generations of Lei Ying nodded in agreement. Their faces were full of bitterness. "I have something to do at home today, so I went home at night. I'm very tired, so I don't know if I can write the 2nd chapter. Please don't stay up late waiting. But don't worry, even if I don't have it tonight, I will make it up tomorrow. It's going to be a new week soon, so I beg for recommendation votes, please. In addition, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone." Chapter 13:27. Rumble in the deafening noise and the violent shaking of the ground, Jishuei and Shinichi's Susanoo were repelled at the same time. Because of the artifact Yada no Kagami, Uchiha Madara's attack on Jishuei was bounced back with the same force, but the huge impact was still wrapped in air waves, and Jishuei's Susanoo was shaken back dozens of steps. In contrast, Shinichi was much more embarrassed. His Susanoo was obviously worse than Uchiha Madara's. Uchiha Madara's Susanoo directly broke his shoulder armor and cut into his shoulder. Fortunately, Shinichi launched his left eye's kaleidoscope pupil technique Heavenly Guard in time, locked his own state, and barely blocked the sword of Uchiha Madara. Otherwise, his Susanoo would have been directly cut in half by Uchiha Madara's Susanoo. After getting out of the contact, Shinichi gasped for breath. Jishuei on the side was also uncomfortable. While suppressing her restless pupil power, she stared at Uchiha Madara, who was gradually swallowed by Sasuke's Amaterasu. Because of the influence of Sasuke's earth life, in just a short moment, the black flame of Amaterasu spread all over Uchiha Madara's Susanoo. From a distance, Uchiha Madara's tall Susanoo was like a huge torch connecting the sky and the earth. Bathed in Sasuke's Amaterasu, Uchiha Madara still held his hands on his chest, as if he didn't care about the black flame of Amaterasu that can burn everything. As Uchiha Madara snorted, the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in his eyes changed into the Rinnegan for a short time, and immediately, it burned all over his Susanoo body, and the black flame of Amaterasu quickly subsided, and eventually turned into smoke. Seeing that the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Uchiha Madara's eye sockets changed into Rinnegan, Jishuei, Itachi, Shinichi, and Sasuke were all surprised. "A mere gravel is nothing compared to me. Madara Uchiha's expression became colder and colder after he easily solved the black flame of Amaterasu. The four flame devils were not surprised for too long, and soon adjusted their mentality. After all, the Rinnegan was not unfamiliar to them, and they would not be confused just because Madara Uchiha had the Rinnegan. The first to attack was Sasuke, who was very confident in his eyes. Then, Jishui and Shinichi also attacked one after another, launching a fierce attack on Uchiha Madara. Only Itachi has been watching coldly in the outer circle, looking for a fatal opportunity. Rumble, the four Susanoo soon became a group, like four gods, ravaging everything in sight. They fought all the way from the desert of the Land of Wind to the border of the Land of Fire, and everything along the way, such as giant rocks, forests, mountains, rivers, etc., were wiped out and destroyed. Boom, another loud noise. Madara Uchiha Susanoo, with only half of his body, fell heavily to the ground. And around Sasuke's purple Susanoo was only a huge skeleton. Jishui's emerald green Susanoo was holding the Yata no Kagami in his left hand was still complete, and the right half was only a shadow swaying in the wind. Even a stable form was gone. Shinichi, because of the pupil technique Imperial Heaven Guard, Susanoo was in the best state of the three and was still in its heyday. Itachi still did not make a move, watching the battle indifferently all the way, as if he was just a neutral observer. At this time, Madara Uchiha, who fell to the ground, used his pupil power, and his complete Susanoo was restored again and stood up again. After a fierce battle, he had a general judgment of the four flame devils. What he was most afraid of was undoubtedly Sasuke's purple Susanoo and Itachi's red Susanoo with the artifact, Juken. Sasuke's Susanoo is the complete body in the real sense, it is the closest to his Susanoo in shape, it is the main force of the four Susanoo. And Itachi's Susanoo is equipped with the artifact, Juken, that can seal everything. Even if it is him, once he is hit head-on, he will most likely fall into the illusion of Juken, and it will be difficult to extricate himself. Therefore, although Itachi has not made a move, he has to focus half of his attention on Itachi and beware of the artifact, Juken, in Itachi's hand, which caused him to be somewhat restrained in the battle just now. In contrast, Jishui and Shinichi are much less threatening to him. However, Jishui and Shinichi's experience is obviously above Sasuke's. Without Jishui and Shinichi's assistance, Sasuke would not even have a chance to fight. Taking advantage of the short break, Uchiha Madara's eyes swept over Sasuke, Jishui, Shinichi, and Itachi one by one. When his eyes stayed on Sasuke, he grinned. What a pity! Among the four flame devils, Sasuke, who has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan and has successfully transplanted the Hashirama cells, has the strongest pupil power, which is indisputable. Then with the fierce battle just now, the experienced Uchiha Madara has already seen through Sasuke's Manjikyu pupil technique is Amaterasu and Earth Life, which can change the form of Amaterasu. For Uchiha, who has the Manjikyu, Susanoo is only a part of his combat power. The Manjikyu pupil technique awakened in his left and right eye is also a key factor affecting his combat power. For example, Obsidian is obviously just an ordinary Manjikyu Uchiha, but because of the domineering pupil technique Kamui, it gives him extraordinary concealment ability and mobility, and his strength is far beyond a normal Manjikyu Uchiha. The two Manjikyu pupil techniques Amaterasu and Earth Life are still very sharp at the Kage level, but once the battle involves the Super Kage level, involving the Rinnegan, would release and other forces that can absorb chakra and directly disintegrate the structure of ninjutsu, Amaterasu and Earth Life immediately become ordinary fire release. So if Sasuke is experienced enough, he will not easily expose his Manjikyu pupil technique in the beginning. Uchiha Madara will be more afraid of him now. After his eyes swept to Sasuke and Shinichi, Uchiha Madara's expression did not change. In the fierce battle just now, Uchiha Madara deliberately revealed one or two flaws in order to test Jishui and Shinichi's Manjikyu pupil technique. According to Jishui and Shinichi's combat style and his own rich experience, he concluded that Jishui's Manjikyu pupil technique is probably related to Genjutsu and cannot be directly used in the Battle of Susanoo, and Shinichi's pupil technique should be in a constant state. Therefore, his evaluation of Jishui and Shinichi is nothing to worry about. Finally, Uchiha Madara's eyes fell on Itachi in the distance, and his eyes gradually became more dignified. The other party turned a blind eye to the flaws he deliberately revealed and has been observing him indifferently, so that he could neither see through his mind nor guess his pupil technique. Yesterday's second chapter, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1328. Looking at the several Susanoo that were getting smaller and smaller in their field of vision, the Kage were filled with emotion. They knew very well that this was the Balrog deliberately leading away Uchiha Madara in order to avoid the melee of Susanoo from affecting the surviving ninjas on the battlefield. Uchiha Madara must have discovered this, but he obviously didn't care. Thus, the several Susanoo fought along the way and gradually moved away from this battlefield that was littered with corpses, ravines, and craggy rocks, until the figures of several Susanoo completely disappeared in the field of vision. 4 generations of Kazekage sat down on the ground. Finally survived. For generations Lei Ying looked around the battlefield with a sad expression. Tens of thousands of ninja coalition under the command of the 5 Kages were defeated and almost wiped out because of Uchiha Madara, who was killed by the Edo Tensei. This reality is really hard for him to accept. 3 generations of Tsukuha Kage said, "This is the world of ninjas, the weak need the gift of the strong to survive." 4 generations Lei Ying instinctively wanted to argue, but recalling the terrible power of Uchiha Madara and his helplessness at that time, he finally chose to be silent. Swish, at this time, several surviving medical ninjas rushed over and quickly treated the Kage's injuries. While receiving treatment, 4 generations of Kazekage asked, "What shall we do now?" 4 generations Lei Ying, who had always been swift and decisive before, was still silent at the moment. "Hey!" 3 generations of Tsukuha Kage sighed. After this battle, tens of thousands of ninja coalition were basically defeated by Uchiha Madara alone. Even the survivors suffered a heavy physical and mental blow. Coupled with chakra's serious consumption, they have no ability to fight again in a short time. 3 generations Naruto said, "Anyway, it's meaningless for us to continue to waste time here. I propose to return to Mai immediately." 4 generations of Kazekage was the first to cast a questioning look. "Mr. Naruto, shouldn't you explain to us first?" 3 generations Naruto replied calmly. "I know that you have a lot of doubts about our Mai, but I can assure you that whether it is Akatsuki or Amatsukami, it is not our Mai village. There must be some conspiracy in it." 3 generations of Tsukuha Kage said coldly, "Isn't Uchiha Madara Mai's people?" Just now, among the 4 Homasubi of Amatsukami, the emerald green and the dark green Susanoo should be Uchiha Jishui and Uchiha Shinichi of your Uchiha clan, right? 4 generations of Kazekage said, "The purple Susanoo should be Uchiha Sasuke, we all saw him during the Chunin exam." 3 generations Naruto insisted, "There must be some misunderstanding in this." Misunderstanding? With a frown, 3 generations of Tsukuha Kage snorted. "It can't be that someone in your Mai secretly formed Amatsukami or joined Amatsukami, and you, who have been in charge of Mai for decades, don't know anything about it? Also, what happened to the Homasubi of your village just now? Why did the Homasubi of Amatsukami obey his orders?" 4 generations of Kazekage slightly recalled the process of Hyojin's appearance just now, and added, "And he seems to be able to perform ninjutsu similar to the Rinnegan Shinra Tensei, and he was able to repel Madara Uchiha Susanoo with just a raise of his hand." 3 generations. Naruto has thought about these details for a long time, but even if he racked his brains, he couldn't think of a reasonable explanation, so he said, "Please rest assured that Mai will give you an explanation for this matter." Seeing that 3 generations Naruto really didn't know anything about it, 3 generations of Tsukihakage had to give up. Well, let's go back to Mai first. In a secret base in the northwest of the Land of Fire. Fo was bored and stretched. "How long are we going to stay here?" Naruto, who was leaning against the door with his hands crossed over his chest, said, "Please be patient. When the situation becomes clearer, we should be able to make further judgments." Fo curiously said, "But didn't Akatsuki already resurrect Jubi? I should no longer be their target, right?" Naruto shook his head. "We can't trust the enemy's words at will. Both the Mizukage-sama and the Uzumaki Naruto of Mai have issued a warning. Akatsuki is likely to take action against the tailed beast." Fo nodded. Because she wasn't a perfect Jinchuriki, in order to avoid being infected by the tailed beast chakra, she almost didn't communicate with the 7 tails in her body, so she didn't receive the warning from the 3 tails and 9 tails like Yagura and Naruto. Boom! At this moment, there was a sudden explosion not far away. Naruto immediately became vigilant and looked at Kurokura, who was assigned to their guard team. Kurokura didn't talk nonsense, immediately activated Byakugan and looked over, then frowned. It seems that the detonation trap arranged by Deadale was triggered by something. Whoosh! In a gust of wind, Deadale, who was standing on the clay bird, fell from the air and said, "Someone tried to sneak in from the ground and accidentally touched my trap." "Did Akatsuki discover this place?" Naruto whispered. Naruto looked at Kurokura. "Did you see the enemy?" Kurokura shook his head. "I didn't see. Maybe they died in the explosion, or maybe they left the range of my Byakugan." Fo asked in surprise, "What should we do now?" After a moment of consideration, Naruto said, "Evacuate immediately." Although he wasn't sure whether this place was exposed or not, but since there is a risk, it must be eliminated immediately. After all, this is not only related to the life and death of the team, but also related to the survival of the 5 great shinobi villages. Deadale waved to everyone. "Come on up." The 4 of them didn't hesitate and immediately jumped on Deadale's clay bird. Soon, the white clay bird took the 4 of them out of the base and flew into the air. Sitting on the bird's back, Fo asked, "Where are we going?" Naruto took out the map he carried with him, compared the direction, and said, "Are we going to base 309? Well, that place is indeed very hidden." Deadale asked curiously, "Where is base 309? Naruto's expression froze and hurriedly asked, "Then where do you want to go?" "I don't know." Shrugging his shoulders, Deadale continued, "If even we don't know where we are going, then our whereabouts won't be exposed." Naruto, Kurokura, and the others suddenly looked at each other in dismay, but they didn't say anything, because after careful consideration, they felt that Deadale's disorientated evacuation method really had its merit. But just when everyone on the clay bird let down their vigilance, a twisting vortex suddenly appeared above the clay bird. I'm asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1329. Whoosh! Almost as soon as the whirlpool appeared, a purple chain shot out of the whirlpool and instantly wrapped around the Manchurian Jinchurian Lifu, pulling her down from the clay bird. What? The other people on the clay bird were all startled by the sudden change in the situation. At this time, not to mention Deadale and Druid, even Kurenma, who has the Byakugan, was completely caught off guard. The few people who were already high up in the sky had their eyes on the ground around them. They didn't expect to be attacked from higher up. However, Deadale's reaction was very fast. Almost as soon as Lifu was pulled away by the chain, he urged the clay bird to turn around and chase after her. Druid, who was selected as the 5th laying, immediately completed the hand seal and shouted, "Lightning release, black spot barb." In an instant, a black bolt of lightning like a cheetah shot out, Boom! Due to the urgency of the situation, Darui didn't have time to aim. His black spot missus quickly caught up with the purple chain that was pulling Furu away and hit it along with Furu. However, under the attack of Druid's black lightning release, the chain that was wrapped around Li Fu was almost undamaged. On the contrary, Li Fu was hit by the black lightning and her hair was trembling. Just as Fu was about to be dragged into the maelstrom by the chains, Deadale immediately joined his palms together and released the Origin Realm stripping technique. In an instant, the light beam of the dust release flashed. Not only did it cut off the chain that was dragging Li Fu, but it also almost cut off half of her head. Whoosh! The clay bird followed closely and caught Li Fu, who was falling from the sky. Then, it suddenly accelerated and struggled to get away from the twisting whirlpool in the sky. After being rescued, Li Fu quickly looked back at the twisting whirlpool in the sky and asked with a bewildered expression, "Isn't that?" Without waiting for Li Fu to finish, Druid nodded with a calm expression. "Yes, it's the Akatsuki," Deadale said. "Kuroma, quickly check if there are any marks left on Farah's body." Kurema was startled and quickly observed Fu carefully, and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the other party didn't leave any marks. Great. Fu also let out a sigh of relief. Deadale didn't relax because of this. Instead, he frowned and looked at Fu suspiciously. Strange, how did the Akatsuki find us? Although Deadale looked unreliable at first glance, he was actually a very sharp person. He was very clear that with the speed of his clay bird, even if the base had been discovered, the other party would not be able to track them so accurately, unless the other party had a way to roughly lock onto their position. Swish! At this moment, the twisting vortex appeared again, blocking the path of the clay bird. So fast? Deadale's pupils shrank. If even his clay bird's speed couldn't shake off the vortex's pursuit, it meant that there was no point in escaping. He could only stop and fight to the death. But this time, a figure walked out of the twisting vortex and calmly floated in the air before raising his hand towards the clay bird. In an instant, everyone on the clay birds felt a strong suction force. They lost control of themselves along with the clay birds and flew uncontrollably towards the figure that walked out of the whirlpool. This suction force was too sudden and fierce. Even experts like Deadale and Druid were thrown into confusion. They couldn't even control their bodies, let alone launch a counterattack. But Deadale was Deadale after all. Seeing that he couldn't escape, he grinned and said, "Then I'll let you experience my ultimate art." After saying that, he tore off the robe on his body, revealing the mouth on his chest that he had modified. Then, he stuffed the explosive clay into his mouth. Then, along with the mouth chewing a few times, the chakra fluctuations in his body immediately rose, and even his body expanded a lot. Humph! The figure in the distance seemed to have sensed something and snorted. Then, he flicked his hand and shot out a black stick that accurately pierced Deadale's left chest. In an instant, the chakra in Deadale's body became completely chaotic, and his swollen body was like a deflated balloon as it shrunk back. At this moment, Fo was sucked in front of the figure. She then discovered that there was a scarlet Sharingan in the other party's palm, and before she could react, she was grabbed by the face and disappeared into the twisting vortex. The whole process didn't even take a second inside the Divine Might space. After throwing the unconscious foe to the ground, Obsidian immediately used the Samsara Eye technique. The purple chain once again extended from his body and dragged the 7 tails out of Foe's body. As the 7 tails entered his body, Obsidian's body swelled irregularly, as if something wanted to break free from his body. This process lasted for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then Obsidian's body gradually calmed down and returned to normal. Phew! After exhaling softly, the corners of Obsidian's mouth rose slightly. In the previous battlefield outside Mai, he almost obtained the entire 9 tails. Although all his previous efforts were in vain because of Ningxi's eruption, He still obtained a huge amount of Nine Tails chakra, and his Jubi's Jinchuriki state was also greatly stabilized. Now that he obtained the 3 tails in Yagura's body and the 7 tails in Fo's body, the unstable state had been fundamentally reversed. At this time, he could clearly feel that the 10 tails in his body was rapidly recovering. Even if he didn't do anything now, his state and strength would be further improved. And as long as the 10 tails fully recovered, not only would he be able to completely get rid of the unstable state, but he would also be able to go a step further and open the legendary Eye of the Moon. Only 1 tail and 9 tails are left. After muttering to himself, Obsidian focused his senses again. He could accurately lock on the position of the 3 tails and the 7 tails because of his Jubi's Jinchuriki's natural perception of the tailed beast. As long as the tailed beast was not dead or completely sealed, he could roughly understand the position of the tailed beast through this perception. However, after a while, he frowned slightly, because he found that whether it was the 9 tails' Jinchuriki Naruto that he had seen outside just now, or the 1 tail that he could vaguely sense before, all of them had disappeared at this moment, as if they were isolated by something. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1330. Strange, Obsidian frowned and whispered. At this time, Zetsu poked out half of his body from the ground and glanced at Fu, who was lying on the ground with her life force exhausted, and said with a happy expression, "Did the 7 tails also succeed? Great." Obsidian didn't pay attention to Zetsu and bowed his head in thought. Zetsu asked, "What's wrong?" Obsidian shook his head and said, "I don't know why, but I can't sense the 1 and 9 tails." Zetsu's face sank. It must be Amatsukumi's doing. It doesn't take too complicated reasoning to come to such a conclusion, because they had fought against Kyubi's Jinchuriki before, and after the appearance of Kuroto with the impure earth form, Kyubi's Jinchuriki and Hyuganiji, who awakened the Tenseigan, disappeared together. From this, it can be seen that Hyojin's Jinchuriki is under Amatsukumi's control, and the 9 tails' Jinchuriki and Ningtsi, who awakened the Tenseigan, must also be Amatsukumi's doing. The reason is very simple. If the 5 great shinobi villages can isolate Obsidian's perception, then Obsidian wouldn't have been able to get the 3 and 7 tails so easily. Well, that's most likely the case. After a pause, Obsidian then asked, "Is there any movement from Amatsukumi?" Zetsu replied, "Except for the 4 Homasubi, no other members of Amatsukumi have appeared, and judging from the Susanoo, 3 of the 4 Homasubi are from the Mai Uchiha clan, so it is very likely that Mai has joined forces with Amatsukumi." Obsidian said in a deep voice, "The other members of Amatsukumi are not important, what I care about is the Yama." Zetsu shook his head. There is no news about Yama at the moment, but judging from the fact that Amatsukumi sent someone to take away the 9 tails Jinchuriki, they should have already guessed our real purpose of starting the 4th Shinobi War. There is no doubt that the real purpose of the Akatsuki starting the 4th Shinobi War is to disrupt the situation and attract the attention of Amatsukumi and the 5 great shinobi villages, making it convenient for them to ambush the Jinchuriki and replenish the tailed beasts needed for the 10 tails. As for White Zetsu's declaration of war against the 5 great shinobi villages and seizing the hegemony of the shinobi world, etc., when White Zetsu's clone declared war on the 5 great shinobi villages at the Gakage meeting, he mentioned sweeping the 5 great shinobi villages and seizing the hegemony of the shinobi world. Obsidian's expression turned serious, and his face was filled with coldness. "If that's the case, then we can only fight Amatsukumi head-on." Ju asked with concern, "Are you confident in facing Yama?" "I really didn't have much confidence before, but now that I have 3 tails and 7 tails, the state of 10 tails in my body has stabilized. I can feel my strength increasing every moment," Obsidian said, full of confidence. Before, because of the lack of tailed beasts, the state of his 10 tails Jinchuriki was extremely unstable, which is also the reason why he has been hiding his head and tail. But now, after obtaining a large number of 9 tails chakra, as well as the 3 tails and 7 tails, the 10 tails in his body is getting closer and closer to completion. Once it reached a critical point, even if he did nothing after that, 10 tails would gradually return to its peak state. It was just like how a tailed beast would resurrect after a period of time after being killed. It was a unique recovery ability of tailed beasts. Zetsu's eyes flashed, and he said with a smile, "It seems that our Eye of the Moon project is about to succeed." Obsidian glanced at Zetsu and then retracted his gaze, and after a while, he said abruptly, "Kuroto, that idiot? He actually died so inexplicably." Zetsu smiled playfully and said, "I don't know if he died in the hands of Amatsukami or someone else. Hey, Naruto is really a high-risk profession. I was looking forward to seeing how he would react when he found out about my true identity, but I didn't expect that he would die before I could do anything to him." Obito was a little sad. "I was looking forward to seeing how the Hokage would react after knowing my true identity, but I didn't expect that he would die before I could do anything." Kuroto was one of the few people in the shinobi world apart from Kakashi. Kuroto crushed Kuroto in the shinobi school's graduation exam and eventually became a student of Konoha's 5th Hokage. Kuroto is one of the few people in the shinobi world that Kuroto cares about. After all, his original dream was to become Naruto. Not only did Hyojin beat him in the graduation exam, but he also beat him in the dream of becoming Naruto. So, after successfully advancing to the 6th path level, he has been looking forward to the final showdown with Hyojin. Then, while enjoying Hyojin's astonishment and surprise, he will personally end the old era and let the light of the Eye of the Moon illuminate the ninja world full of despair. Swish, with a flash, Kuroto landed in the middle of the forest and helped Kuroto, who had fallen unconscious on the ground. After saving Kuroto, Hyojin asked, "Where is Fu?" "Naruto-sama." Kuroto was startled at first, and then immediately said anxiously, "It's the Akatsuki, they kidnapped Fu." Hyojin's face didn't change much and asked calmly, "When did this happen?" Kuroto hurriedly told Hyojin how they evacuated and how they were attacked on the way. "Obsidian," Hyojin murmured, then glanced around and said to Kuroto, "Deadale and Druid are nearby, and there are signs of life, you go and wake them up." After saying that, Hyojin didn't delay. His figure flashed and disappeared. Hyojin didn't expect the 3rd and 7th tails to be taken away by the Akatsuki, but it was also within his expectations. In fact, when Hyojin was still in the Edo form state, he didn't complete the ritual preparation, and the Akatsuki successfully resurrected the Jubi. Whether it was Amatsukami or the 5 great ninja villages, they were actually at a disadvantage in the confrontation with the Akatsuki, but the Akatsuki didn't realize this. It can be said that at this time, the Akatsuki is invincible, as long as they dare to make a move, destroying the 5 great ninja villages, collecting the tailed beasts, etc. Therefore, just like the Akatsuki provoked the 4th Shinobi War, using the war to attract the attention of Amatsukami and the 5 great ninja villages, and secretly collecting the tailed beasts, Hyojin also needs to put all the tailed beasts in the light, in order to show the confidence of Amatsukami and deter the Akatsuki that has the Jubi. If Kuroto hid all the tailed beasts from the beginning, it would not only reveal Amatsukami's timidness, but it would also stimulate the Akatsuki, which already has the power of the 6th path level, to take the risk and prematurely escalate the conflict, making him lose the precious time to collect chakra and choose the location of the ritual. However, he didn't expect that the one who became the Jubi's Jinchuriki was not Nagato, but Obsidian, who already has the bug-level spacetime ninjutsu, so he didn't have the time to transfer the 3rd and 7th tails. Here's the first update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1331. However, it is precisely because of the possibility of being attacked by the Akatsuki that Hyojin is prepared to suffer a certain amount of losses. To him, the one-tailed human Jinchuriki, Gaara, and the nine-tailed human Jinchuriki, Naruto, who knew too many of his secrets and had mastered the magnetic release that could excavate gold, were things that he had to protect. Because if these two people fall into the hands of the Akatsuki, his plan will be completely ruined, so he strengthened the seal on Gaara and left a summoning technique on Naruto's body. In contrast, the three-tails Jinchuriki Yagura and the seven-tails Jinchuriki Lifu have a slightly lower priority. On the one hand, this is to confuse the Akatsuki, and on the other hand, it is also to confuse the 5 great shinobi villages. Because Hyojin knows very well that the Akatsuki has planted a large number of informants in the 5 great shinobi villages. After all, even he, Naruto, was once visited by the Obsidian. Therefore, whether he uses the identity of Naruto or the identity of Yama of Amatsukami to restrict the freedom of movement of the Mizukage and the Jinchuriki of Takenin village, it will arouse the suspicion of the 5 great shinobi villages, and thus arouse the suspicion of the Akatsuki. Instead of arousing the Akatsuki's vigilance in advance, it is better to let the Akatsuki focus all their energy on starting the war in the shinobi world and fighting against the imaginary immortal Yama. After all, the ritual is the key to everything. All the way north, it didn't take long for Hyojin to sneak into the snow country. Because it is covered with ice and snow all year round, the snow country in the polar region is actually a pure land. Although it is poor, it has always enjoyed a rare peace in the shinobi world. And this is one of the reasons why Hyojin chose the snow country as the location for his second ritual, because it is hidden and safe, and it meets the requirements of the ritual. These 2 points are equally important. Whoosh! With the sound of the wind breaking, Hyojin finally returned to the rainbow ice wall. After landing on the sky fortress, Suijin's shadow clone nodded towards Suijin and turned into a puff of white smoke with a puff sound. Sensei! At this time, Naruto and Ningtse came to greet Kuroto. It was the shadow clone that contacted Naruto and Neji and safely transferred them from the battlefield outside of Konoha to the snow country. Glancing at Naruto and of Ningtse, Hyojin asked, "How is your recovery?" In the previous battle in Konoha, Naruto's Kyuubi chakra was absorbed by the hungry ghost path, and Neji also consumed a lot of Ryubi chakra, so both of them are not in good condition at the moment. Naruto clenched his fists and said eagerly, "I've almost recovered. Sensei, when can I go to the battlefield again? If Sasuke is alone, he won't be able to hold on." Ningtse could guess why Hyojin wanted to transfer them, so he didn't ask to fight. Hyojin rubbed Naruto's head. "With the 1st generation, 2nd generation, and your father, the 4th generation Naruto, there's nothing for you to worry about." Naruto scratched his ears and cheeks. "I just want my father to see how strong I am. Don't worry, there will be a chance." Smiling, Hyojin continued, "But for now, stay here and recover your chakra. Also, if you can't stay idle, you can create more shadow clones to absorb nature energy. I might need them later." Hearing Hyojin mention nature energy, Naruto quickly asked, "Sensei, what is this place? Why is the nature energy even denser than in the Ryuchi cave? This is so strange." Hyojin's eyes lit up. "The nature energy here is denser than in the Ryuchi cave?" Naruto nodded. "Yes, even if I don't concentrate, I can quickly gather nature energy here." Next to him, Ningji also added, "Although my perception of natural energy isn't that sharp, I also feel that the natural energy here is slightly denser than on Mount Wonderwood." Hyojin smiled. "Seems like I didn't choose the wrong place for the ceremony." Then, Hyojin looked around. Because of the geothermal meter buried under the rainbow ice wall, the area around the rainbow ice wall was lush and lush. It was a sharp contrast to the outside world of ice and snow in the snow country. The 6 huge ice walls that gave the rainbow ice walls its name were twice as tall as before after they were modified by Gaara and the others. Due to the gold embedded on the walls, the light reflected by the ice walls was even brighter than before. This also caused the rainbow hanging above the rainbow ice walls to be even more dazzling than before. Subconsciously, Hyojin opened his Tenseigan and checked more carefully. At this time, under the air fortress, the Spear of Heaven Tower has been placed, and the bottom of the tower is connected to the geothermal instrument that was buried deep in the ground. As long as the seal on the Spear of Heaven is lifted, the Spear of Heaven can immediately extract the energy of the earth vein through the geothermal instrument, and then convert it into powerful chakra and spray it out. Moving his gaze up, Hyojin scanned the sky fortress again. He was the one who personally modified the grayer mineral vein into the ritual altar, so there was nothing to worry about. It was just that the project of re-embedding the grayer mineral vein in the center of the ring-shaped sky fortress was completed by Gaara, Xianglin, and Ziyuan according to his drawings, so he needed to check this part again. Not bad. After a while, Hyojin nodded with satisfaction. Except for using too much gold, which caused the entire sky fortress to look too dazzling after the transformation, everything else met his standards and met his requirements. Moving his gaze up, Hyojin looked at the gorgeous rainbow above his head again and silently said, "Geothermal meter, sky spear, grayer mineral vein, ice wall rainbow." These 4 things that Hyojin muttered silently formed a straight vertical line from the ground to the sky. And the altar where Hyojin held the ritual was in the middle of this vertical line. If everything went well, he could not only absorb all the energy from the nearby geothermal meter, but he could also absorb the energy of the rainbow. All the natural energy in the geothermal meter, the air, and even the sunlight would be absorbed into his pocket. This way, not only could he make up for the loss of the 3-tailed and 7-tailed, but he could also create more and stronger chakra for him. However, there was a prerequisite for all of this, and that was that he must master the immortal arts and be able to directly absorb natural energy. Otherwise, the gorgeous rainbow in the sky would not only be of no benefit to him, but it would also interfere with his ritual. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1332. In Hyojin's original plan, the chakra sources he needed for the ritual were the giant Tenseigan that he controlled, the dragon vein, Ziyuan who had fused with the demon Morio, the grayer mineral vein, the heaven spear, and the complete 9 tails, 1 tail, 3 tails, and 7 tails. These chakra sources, without exception, were all tailed beasts. Among them, Ziyuan and 9 tails chakra amount obviously exceeded the ordinary tailed beasts, and if the yang attribute grayer mineral vein and the yin attribute heaven spear could be combined, the chakra amount would also far exceed the ordinary tailed beast. These chakra sources added together, coupled with the Tenseigan that had been promoted to the 6 paths level after the last ritual, and the short burst of the 8 inner hidden gates, according to Hyojin's estimation, it was enough to support him to break through the Kekii net, the symbol of immortality. Now there was an accident, and the 3 tails and 7 tails were taken away by the Akatsuki organization. The loss of 2-tailed beasts was a small gap for Hyojin. Fortunately, no matter what he did, he was used to leaving some leeway, especially in the key matter of collecting chakra sources, so this gap was not impossible to make up. Immortal arts. Thinking of this, Hyojin silently said one. If there was something more energy than the 10 tails, then there was no doubt that it was the natural energy scattered in the earth veins, the air, and even the sunlight and the stars. Because the divine tree that transformed into the 10 tails was born from natural energy. And the chakra fruit that made Otsutsuki Kagaya break through the shackles in one fell swoop and achieve the Kekii net, the nutrients were also absorbed by the divine tree. Therefore, as long as Hyojin completely mastered the immortal arts, He could use the special environment of the rainbow ice wall to collect the energy of the earth veins excavated by the geothermal instrument and the heaven spear, and the rainbow energy gathered by the 6 ice walls. With this huge amount of energy, the loss of the 3 tails and 7 tails would not matter. Swish, 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 just as Hyojin was deep in his thoughts, Xiang Li, Ziyuan, Ailer, and Bai, who were dressed in God's organization uniforms, arrived at the Sky Fortress one after another. Seeing that Hyojin seemed to be thinking about something, the others did not dare to disturb him, and stood quietly at the side. Naruto and Ningxi looked at the 4 of them curiously. Obviously, because all 4 of them were wearing masks, Naruto and Ningxi didn't recognize Ziyuan and Haku, who were in the same batch as them. At this time, Kuroto retracted his scattered thoughts and glanced at Xianglin, Ziyuan, Gaara, Haku, Naruto, and Niji in front of him one by one. The 6 people in front of him were either his disciples or his subordinates. He had spent a lot of effort to nurture them, and now it was their turn to repay Hyojin. Next, I'm going to perform a ritual, and I need each of you to cooperate. Hyojin's tone was very calm. For some reason, the closer it was to this moment, the less nervous and anxious he felt. Yes. Xianglin, Ziyuan, Ailer, Bai, and Ningxi nodded in unison. Among the 5 of them, although only Xianglin and Gaara knew what kind of ritual Suijin was going to perform, neither of them had the slightest hesitation. Ritual? Only Naruto was stunned for a moment, then he nodded, but his face was obviously a little confused. Hyojin did not explain much and only ordered, Xianglin, Ningxi, stay here. The rest of you go and prepare. Ziyuan, Ailer, and Bai bowed to Hyojin and then left the Sky Fortress with the confused Naruto. In the blink of an eye, only Hyojin, Xianglin, and Ningxi were left on the altar of the Sky Fortress. At that moment, Hyojin waved his hand and used Rain Rui to pull a portable storage compartment from the storage room over. Then, he placed it firmly on the altar. Ningxi glanced at it from the corner of his eyes and was shocked to find out that the portable storage compartment was actually Hyojin himself. To be more precise, it was Hyojin's corpse. Then, he looked at Hyojin and said, "Teacher, this is..." Hyojin's gaze was also on his body. He opened the portable storage compartment and checked it carefully. After confirming that his body had been completely repaired, he said, "Yes, this is my corpse." Ningxi thought of something and said happily, "Are you going to be resurrected?" Kuroto nodded, then looked at Xianglin on the side. "Let's begin." After saying that, he did not say anything else and immediately made a hand seal to remove his impure earth reincarnation. Whoosh, a breeze blew, and Hyojin's impure earth physique turned into ashes in the wind and disappeared without a trace. Staring at the dissipating ashes in front of him, Ningxi was shocked and bewildered. His face was full of shock. Xianglin took a deep breath and did not say a word. She gathered all the chakra in her body and raised her arms to make a hand seal. As her control over the eye of reincarnation in her eye sockets deepened, Xianglin naturally obtained a lot of information about the eye of reincarnation. Therefore, she was very clear about how much damage the true resurrection technique of the natural reincarnation technique would do to the caster. Even if she had adapted to the first-generation cells and obtained the immortal body of the 6 realms like Nagato, even if she was equipped with the Form 4 biological armor that could sustain her life, and even if she was standing on the grayer mineral vein, which was known as the source of life, there was still a high probability that she would die from using the natural reincarnation technique. However, she did not hesitate. The eye of reincarnation in her eye sockets was filled with many emotions at the moment, but she did not retreat. After a few breaths, Xianglin finished making the hand seal and shouted in a clear voice, "Heretic, natural reincarnation technique." In an instant, the chakra on Xianglin's body rose sharply. This. Ningxi took a step back subconsciously. This was because in his field of vision, The chakra on Xiang Lin's body was as dazzling as the blazing sun. If it was not for Hyojin's Tenseigan, he would have been dazzled by the huge chakra. At the same time, Xiuan, Ailer, Bai, and Naruto, who had retreated to the chakra teleportation area outside the rainbow ice wall, also sensed the terrifying chakra. All of them looked at the sky fortress in shock. Xiuan mumbled to herself, "Such a strong chakra wave." Yes. Ailer and Bai nodded. Both of them also felt the terrifying chakra wave. What's happening over there? Naruto was still confused. Meanwhile, the 9 tails in his body said with a serious expression, "That's the power of the Eye of Reincarnation. It looks like your teacher is going to be resurrected. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes." Chapter 1333. Resurrection. Naruto was taken aback for a moment. Because Hyojin in the state of impure earth body was no different from usual in Naruto's eyes, he was still so calm, powerful, and mysterious, not like a dead person at all, so in Naruto's subconscious, he did not have a deep understanding of Hyojin's death. So at this moment, when he learned that Hyojin was about to resurrect, he did not have much emotion. 9 Tails thought that Naruto was questioning it, so it snorted coldly, "What's so strange about this? I told you long ago, for a strong person like him, death is just an experience, not the end." When one's strength reached a certain level, the boundary between life and death was actually not so clear. If the Samsara sage had not separated the 10 Tails, established the ninja sect, and passed on his chakra to everyone hand in hand, he would not have died of old age at all. Hearing the word resurrection from Naruto's mouth, Xiuan, Gaara, and Haku were all moved, their eyes shining with anticipation. For them, this was a miracle they had been looking forward to for a long time. On the Sky Fortress, with the rapid rise of the Rinnegan's ocular power, this huge ocular power seemed to open up some kind of distorted space, forcibly summoning Hyojin's soul back to the underworld. Is this the underworld? Ningxi, who was on the side, was dumbfounded. The Rinnegan was a vision that distorted time and space, blurred life and death. Not to mention ordinary people, even Jutsu Kekai Ninja would not be able to see through it. But because Ningxi had Hyojin's 6-path level Tenseigan in his eye socket, he could see this vision and witness the shocking scene of the Rinnegan distorting time and space, summoning Hyojin's spirit body back from the underworld. At this moment, as Hyojin's soul was successfully summoned back, Hyojin's body, which was lying in the portable storage compartment, suddenly reached out, grabbed the edge of the portable storage compartment, and sat up. Ningxi hurriedly looked at Hyojin, who had suddenly sat up. He discovered that the surface of Hyojin's pale corpse was turning rosy and glossy at a speed visible to the naked eye. Dong dong! Dong dong! Dong dong! Then, Ningxi heard Hyojin's heartbeat. Teacher has revived. Ningxi was taken aback for a moment, but soon after, he found it hard to believe. He had only heard about resurrection from the dead in myths and legend. Although he had always believed that his teacher could be resurrected, he still felt like he was in a dream when he saw it with his own eyes. Who? Hyojin, who was in the portable storage compartment, let out a sigh of relief and stood up. Almost at the same time as Hyojin stood up, Xiang Lin and Ningxi, who were on the altar, fell to the ground at the same time. Xiang Lin used the natural samsara technique, and his vitality was instantly drained by this technique. His body suddenly lost its support, so he fell to the ground. Ningxi covered his eyes and rolled on the ground in pain. Obviously, with Hyojin's resurrection, his pair of Tenseigan transplanted into Ningxi's body became restless again. Hyojin, who had his eyes closed, first looked at Xiang Lin. At this time, although there were no eyes in his eye sockets, it did not prevent him from seeing things, because he could observe things through the giant Tenseigan that was connected to his mind. After taking a closer look at Xiang Lin, he found that the vitality in Xiang Lin's body had been completely exhausted, and the chakra in his body was even fainter. With a solemn face, Hyojin squatted down and did nothing. He just patted Xiang Lin's shoulder gently and said, "Don't let me down." Hearing Hyojin's words, Xiang Lin, whose eyes had begun to slacken, reignited his fighting spirit in his eyes, and said, I won't let you down." Hyojin didn't say anything, and didn't do anything. He just slowly got up. Now whether he can survive or not depends on Xiang Lin's own will, and Hyojin can do nothing but wait. Because this is not just a problem of chakra, it also involves the problem of vitality and a faint contract power. In this case, Hyojin, who has just been resurrected, can't help much. However, Hyojin also found that the reason why Xiang Lin lost so much vitality is directly related to the difficulty of resurrecting him. After all, he is a strong person who once stepped into the six-path realm, and belongs to the ranks of the strongest people in the shinobi world. The consumption of resurrecting him is obviously different from resurrecting an ordinary person. This is also under the condition that Hyojin has properly repaired the body. If this six-path realm body is completely destroyed, then the consumption of Xiang Lin's vitality to resurrect him will be even greater. After all, it is not easy to recast a quasi-six-path realm body. Xiang Lin herself has not reached the six-path realm. Even if her Rinnegan can achieve this kind of thing, it will inevitably cost her an unbearable price. Fortunately, Hyojin has properly repaired his body, and the six-path realm Tenseigan was also handed over to Ningxi, so it didn't interfere with Xiang Lin's natural reincarnation technique. Therefore, Xiang Lin only needs to summon Hyojin's soul and resurrect Hyojin's body. Soon, with the outbreak of Xiang Lin's will to live, her whirlpool fusion thousand hands physique gradually began to take effect. At the same time, the Type 4 bioarmor on her body also started to overload, fully supplying her with chakra. And under the resonance of chakra, the yang release that symbolizes vitality, the Greer mineral vein also shone brightly. Hyojin's expression changed and said, "Xiang Lin, try to master the Rinnegan. This moment of life and death is not only a test for Xiang Lin, but also a rare opportunity." Because after using the natural reincarnation technique, Xiang Lin was not the only one who was damaged. The pair of Rinnegan in her eye sockets was also damaged because of the excessive consumption of ocular power. Therefore, at this time, Xiang Lin could take advantage of the situation, further control the Rinnegan, and rely on the power of the Rinnegan to survive this disaster. And the Samsara immortal body, the Type 4 bioarmor, and the Greer mineral vein, these factors were delaying her death, buying time for her to completely subdue the Rinnegan. Not long after, Xiang Lin's closed eyes suddenly opened, and the Rinnegan in her eye sockets shone with a strange light. And with the recovery of the ocular power of the Rinnegan, the vitality in Xiang Lin's body also began to gradually recover. The corner of Hyojin's mouth twitched. Although he has not used the Rinnegan, he can clearly feel that the current Xiang Lin, just like Nagato, has completely mastered the Rinnegan and obtained the deepest level of power of the Rinnegan. The second update, the end of the month, the students who have monthly votes, please support me. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1334. Looking at the pale Xiang Lin, who stood up, Hyojin chuckled and said, "How do you feel?" Xiang Lin gasped and replied, "I'm just a little dizzy." "Just dizzy," Hyojin smiled. Xiang Lin was able to survive after using the natural reincarnation technique, which undoubtedly confirmed Hyojin's initial speculation. That was the Rinnegan's natural reincarnation technique, which was not the pure life-for-life technique developed by Chio Granny in the Sand Crypsis. Instead, it was a high-level use of the yin and yang integration of the universal power. The reason why the caster would die after using it was only because of excessive consumption, overdrawing their own vitality, and some kind of backlash from the underworld. In other words, as long as the caster was strong enough, they would not die. This was like the Sage of the Six Paths in the original time and space who saved Sasuke. Seeing that although Xiang Lin was still very weak, her state had gradually stabilized and there was no danger to her life, so Hyojin turned his gaze to Ningxi on the side. With a wave of his hand, Ningxi, who was struggling on the ground, and then pressed one hand on Ningxi's eyebrows, soothing the restless Tenseigan in Ningxi's eye sockets. Thank you, Sensei. Ningxi, who seemed to collapse, looked worse than Xiang Lin, who had just used the natural reincarnation technique. Hyojin asked, "Are you okay?" "No. I'm fine." Ningxi, who was panting heavily, shook his head and immediately looked ashamed. "Sensei, I don't even have the ability to bear your eyes, it's really incompetent." Hyojin said, "No, your performance is very good." This was not deliberately comforting Ningxi, but Ningxi's performance really surprised him. His Tenseigan is not worse than Madara Uchiha's Rinnegan, especially after the last failed ritual. His Tenseigan has entered the threshold of the six-path level. In this case, Ningxi can barely withstand his Tenseigan, which is undoubtedly a very good performance. Ningxi, who recovered, said with a serious face, "Sensei, since you have been resurrected, then my mission is completed, you can take back the Tenseigan." Looking at Ningxi, Hyojin said, "Don't be discouraged, you may have your own Tenseigan." Ningxi was stunned for a moment before he looked at Hyojin blankly. "Ah, really?" Hyojin smiled and nodded. Ningxi suddenly had motivation. "Sensei, I will work hard." Hyojin didn't say anything more. He directly took out the nutrition jar containing Ningxi's Byakugan, and then launched the giant Tenseigan to suppress the cage bird curse mark on Ningxi's forehead. At the same time, he quickly completed the eye replacement surgery, took back his Tenseigan, and put Ningxi's Byakugan back to Ningxi. After retrieving his Tenseigan, Hyojin felt it for a while and then slowly opened his eyes. Because he has been nourished by Ningxi's Byakugan chakra, the state of his Tenseigan has not declined significantly, and it has almost been maintained at the state when he failed the ritual. At that time, this pair of Tenseigan has already reached the six-path level. After all, the realm of six-path is both difficult to enter and difficult to fall. The reason why Hyojin's body fell is that he forcibly separated the 6 clones of different chakra attributes that were integrated into his body. This is a fundamental injury, directly destroying the integrity of the 7 chakra attributes in his body, so his realm fell. But the Tenseigan that absorbed most of the essence of the last ritual doesn't have this problem. So at the moment when he retrieved the Tenseigan, Hyojin's state completely recovered to its peak. Even in his normal state, he is the strongest person under the six-path level, and once he enters the Tenseigan chakra mode, before his chakra is consumed, he can completely rival the real six-path level powerhouses. After a long time, Hyojin waved his hand towards Xiang Lin and Ningxi. "You two can also leave." "Yes." Xiang Lin and Ningxi saluted Hyojin together, then left the Sky Fortress and came to the chakra transport area located in the outer circle. At this time, Xiuyuan and Naruto greeted each other. One asked Xiang Lin, and the other asked Ningxi, curiously asking about what happened on the Sky Fortress just now. After getting the exact news that Hyojin has been resurrected, everyone looked at Xiang Lin in surprise. The 6 people present are actually not all familiar with each other, so it's hard for those who don't understand Xiang Lin to imagine that the girl wearing the Yang God mask in front of them actually has the ability to resurrect the dead. Although tired, Xiang Lin still enjoyed the shocked eyes of everyone, and proudly snorted at Xiuyuan on the side. Xiuyuan pursed her lips. "What's there to be proud of?" Xiang Lin deliberately raised her small head slightly. "Sure enough, I am more important to the Lord." Xiuyuan immediately got angry, and with her foot on the magic formation on the ground, she snorted heavily. This chakra transport area located on the periphery of the rainbow ice wall is actually a huge magic formation, in which there are 10 special sealing techniques, and Ziyuan is standing on one of the sealing techniques. And as long as one stands on these 10 special sealing techniques, they can transmit their own chakra to the altar of the Sky Fortress with minimal loss without interfering with the rainbow ice wall system. Therefore, the people that Hyojin arranged to be in the magic formation are the main chakra source for the ceremony later, and Ziyuan is the main force. As if not expecting the two young gods to be at loggerheads, Naruto and Ningxi looked at each other. They are always like this, you'll get used to it. Chapter 1335. Soon, everyone began to prepare themselves. Ziyuan used the shadow clone technique and created 2 shadow clones. Including the main body, there were 3 of them sitting cross-legged on her sealing technique in a triangular formation. As a witch, she also mastered the immortal spell and could absorb natural energy. Therefore, she created 2 clones to absorb natural energy together, increasing the total amount of natural energy she could store. Creating 2 clones was the most reasonable arrangement for her at the moment. If there were more, she would consume too much energy on the clones and reduce the efficiency of her absorption of natural energy. Since the immortal spell chakra was a combination of chakra and natural energy, the amount of chakra she had would directly affect the efficiency of the immortal spell chakra synthesis. On the other hand, Gaara and Niji sat quietly on their own sealing technique. Neither of them had mastered the immortal spell, so they didn't need to prepare anything in advance. They just needed to adjust their state. Ningxi, in particular, had just gone through a big battle not long ago and had just undergone an eye transplant surgery. Therefore, he urgently needed to adjust his state. The dragon vein also needed to recover chakra. Naruto, who was the last to enter the formation, looked around for a while, then scratched his nose with his thumb and shouted with great momentum, "Multiple shadow clone technique." Bang, bang, bang! In an instant, more than 10 Naruto appeared in a puff of white smoke. Ziyuan glanced at Naruto and said, "Idiot, why did you create so many shadow clones? Your own chakra is spread out so much, the speed of the immortal spell chakra synthesis will be slower." Naruto smiled proudly, then together with the shadow doppelgangers, occupied several empty spots in the magic circle. Ningxi helped to explain, "This is Master's arrangement." Ziyuan was a little surprised, but she didn't say anything. She immediately looked away and focused on absorbing natural energy. Ningxi quickly said to Naruto, "Don't waste time, get ready." And Naruto and his doppelgangers answered in unison, then sat down cross-legged and concentrated on absorbing the nature energy. He could create more shadow doppelgangers than others to absorb nature energy, mainly because the 9 tails in his body could also absorb nature energy after the yin and yang integration. Therefore, his absorption efficiency was 2 to 3 times that of ordinary people, or even more. Outside the formation, Bai was quietly absorbing the natural energy while looking around vigilantly. Xianglin sat on the ground and took out some food from her small bag to eat. At the same time, she sensed the reincarnation eyes in her eye sockets thoughtfully. Just at the moment of life and death, she completed a deep connection with this pair of reincarnation eyes. It was a very mysterious feeling. It was as if the eyes of Samsara had finally accepted her, recognized her as its master, and saved her from the brink of death. At the same time, she realized that she seemed to have awakened a new eye technique, a space-time eye technique on the Sky Fortress. Hyojin stood quietly in the center of the altar, playing with a small porcelain bottle in his hand. 3 generations of Kazekage puppets were meticulously setting up the altar on the side. They moved the 6 restored clones of Hyojin's water clone, fire clone, wind clone, Earth Clone, Thunder Clone, and Yang Clone to the altar one by one and accurately placed them on the 6 corners of the altar. Hyojin just glanced at his 6 clones, then retracted his gaze and focused his attention on the small porcelain bottle in his hand again. This small porcelain bottle was the secret medicine of the country of demons that was given to him by the previous Miko. Its effect was the same as the toad oil of Mount Miamu. It could help the user feel the nature energy and increase the probability of the user mastering the immortal technique. Hyojin was not a stranger to the immortal technique. He had observed Naruto, who practiced the Dragon Pit Cave immortal technique, and he had also discussed with Bai, who accidentally mastered the immortal technique due to the curse seal. He had also absorbed the immortal technique chakra from Bai and used it personally. Therefore, he already had a clear idea of how to practice the immortal technique. Moreover, he was now the strongest person below the 6 Daos realm. His own chakra had already surpassed the ordinary human pillar strength. Therefore, whether it was strength, physique, or chakra's amount, he had completely met the basic requirements to practice the immortal technique. It could be said that he was only one step away. Gently exhaling, Hyojin no longer hesitated. He immediately opened the lid of the porcelain bottle, took out a secret medicine, and swallowed it. Mastering the immortal technique was a threshold that he had to face now. Only by crossing this threshold could he carry out the ritual and break through the bloodline sequence net. Otherwise, all the plans and arrangements would be empty talk. After the secret medicine entered his stomach, Hyojin carefully felt it and found that there seemed to be no change. But just as he slightly frowned, he suddenly found that there seemed to be something more in the air around him. After noticing the strangeness, he immediately activated the Tenseigan. In an instant, his pair of bright star-like Tenseigan bloomed with dazzling brilliance, and everything around him became clear and strange. It was clear because the special substances in the air were no longer blurred in his vision, and became clear and distinguishable. And it was strange because he had never seen these substances in the air before. Nature energy. In a flash, Hyojin understood the true identity of these special substances. The discovery of nature energy also meant that Hyojin's body had the possibility to absorb nature energy. However, he was not too excited. Instead, he suppressed the excitement in his heart and calmed his mind. In the communication with Haku, he found that the state of mind was very important for absorbing nature energy. The calmer and more peaceful the state of mind, the easier it was to absorb nature energy. On the contrary, if the state of mind was too impetuous and anxious, not only would the absorption of nature energy be slow, but it might even backfire. After a while, his state of mind completely calmed down, and the scattered thoughts were also collected one by one. Then, he slowly raised his hand and reached out to a wisp of nature energy in front of him. Unlike other ninjas who cultivated the immortal technique, Hyojin had a huge advantage. That is, he has a pair of 6-path level Tenseigan. With the help of the secret medicine, he can clearly see where the nature energy is and how much it is, so it will be easier to absorb it, and he won't have to do it randomly. Under the insight of the Tenseigan, he accurately absorbed a wisp of nature energy and successfully combined it with his Tenseigan chakra to form the immortal technique Tenseigan chakra. The corner of Hyojin's mouth slightly raised. It seems that all the preparations before weren't in vain. After saying that, he opened his arms and fiercely absorbed the surrounding nature energy like a giant whale. There are only a few days left in May. Students who still have monthly votes, please support me, please. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. The black stripes were all absorbed by the diamond mark of the Ein seal between his eyebrows. Clenching his fists, Hyojin said in a low voice, No, I'm already in immortal mode. With Kuroto's degree of control over his own body, even the slightest change in his body can't escape his insight, so he doesn't need to try much at all, just by clenching his fist a little. He knows that his strength, speed, perception, and so on have obviously improved. There was only one explanation for this overall improvement, and that was that he was already in immortal mode. This is strange, however. At this moment, there was no mutation on his body. Even the black stripes that appeared on his face had been absorbed by the diamond mark of the Een seal. At this moment, his attention gradually focused on the Een seal mark between his eyebrows. If there was anything different about him from before he activated immortal mode, it would be the Een seal mark between his eyebrows that was shining with a faint light. Here's the first update. I'll continue to ask for monthly votes at the end of the month. Students who still have monthly votes, don't forget about it. Chapter 1337. Hyojin reached out and touched the shining Een seal mark between his eyebrows. There was no doubt that something had gone wrong with his immortal mode. At first, everything was normal. The moment he activated immortal mode, black stripes appeared on his face, just like Shodai and Haku. But then, something strange happened. He had just been resurrected, and the empty Een seal shone inexplicably and quickly absorbed the black stripes that symbolized the normal immortal mode. It seems that my immortal mode is a bit different. Hyojin frowned slightly. As a researcher, he would instinctively resist any accidents that were beyond his control. Therefore, he was very cautious about the current change. While fully activating the Tenseigan, he carefully sensed his body. After a while, he gradually came to a conclusion. Judging from the current situation, his immortal mode seemed to have been affected by the Een seal and had changed to a certain extent. The external manifestation of this change was that the black stripes that symbolized immortal mode on his face had disappeared and were replaced by the shining Een seal mark. And the internal manifestation was that he found that he could use the Een seal to store the immortal art chakra and exert influence on his immortal mode. In short, he could enter immortal mode at any time and place by storing the immortal art chakra in the Een seal in advance. At the same time, he could also use the immortal art chakra stored in the Een seal to extend the duration of his immortal mode. It doesn't seem to be a bad thing. Hyojin raised the corner of his mouth, and his heart gradually calmed down, because he found that the mutation of his immortal mode was also due to the Tenseigan. It was his Tenseigan that suppressed the immortal art chakra all the way, making the immortal art chakra obediently be controlled by the Een seal. Without the Tenseigan, the Een seal alone would not be able to store the huge immortal art chakra, and thus affect his immortal mode. After confirming that there were no hidden dangers, Hyojin began to store the immortal art chakra into the Een seal. Fortunately, the nature energy in the rainbow ice wall was even denser than in the three Saint lands. Otherwise, if it was any other place, the nature energy in the surroundings would have been completely sucked dry. After a long time, the Een seal between his eyebrows was finally filled with the immortal technique chakra. Hyojin heaved a sigh of relief. The immortal art chakra didn't just require a large amount of natural energy, it also required ordinary chakra to fuse with it. Therefore, even he was exhausted trying to fill the Een seal. Sitting cross-legged on the altar, Suijin took advantage of the free time to look around while recovering his chakra through the Grell mine under his buttocks. 6 clones had been arranged on the 6 corners of the altar, and the highly active onigami sprout was also taken out from the cultivation laboratory by the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. Then, he looked beyond the altar and looked further away. The angle of the 6 ice walls, the rainbow in the sky, the altar in the middle, the vertical accuracy of the spear of heaven on the ground, the operation of the geothermal instrument buried deep in the ground, the situation of the chakra transportation area, the situation of the outermost enchantment, After checking all the links one by one and confirming that there were no omissions, Hyojin retracted his gaze and then slowly raised his head, past the gorgeous rainbow above his head, and looked into the deep sky. Now there was still a hidden danger, and that was Otsutsuki Samurai on the moon. The enchantment on the periphery of the rainbow ice wall could only block the perception of the shinobi world, but it could not isolate the perception of the moon in the deep sky. And this ritual's ability level is at least 10 times more than the previous failed ritual. So once the ritual is officially launched, the rainbow ice wall will become a beacon in the starry sky. At that time, as long as Otsutsuki Samurai is not blind, he will definitely be aware of this place. After so long, whether it is success or failure, there should be a result on Otsutsuki Samurai's side. It usually takes a month to fuse with an eye at the level of the Tenseigan. Even if something goes wrong in the middle, 2 or 3 months should be enough. Therefore, there must be a result on Otsutsuki Samurai's side. If he succeeds, then he will not only have the giant Tenseigan of the Otsutsuki clan, but also a single pair of Tenseigan. He can enter the Tenseigan chakra mode, use the truth-seeking ball, and his strength will be close to the 6th-path level. And if he fails, he can at least control the giant Tenseigan like before, and have the strength to rival Nagato at his peak. The first and second stages of the ritual will be quieter, and with the barrier, it should be barely covered up. When it comes to the third stage of the 6th-path level, the movement will be impossible to cover up. From then on, Otsutsuki Samurai may make a move at any time. If he succeeds in fusing with the Tenseigan and can use the truth-seeking ball, then he will have the ability to forcibly interfere, or even destroy my ritual. This point cannot be ignored. Thinking of this, Hyojin's eyes shifted and looked at the chakra transportation area in the distance. Once the ritual begins, he can't leave the altar, so if he wants to stop Otsutsuki Samurai, he can only rely on the disciples and subordinates in the transportation area. In the original time and space, Naruto and Hinata, who received a gift from the Sage of 6 Paths, joined forces and defeated Otsutsuki Samurai, who had the Tenseigan, but that was when they destroyed the giant Tenseigan first. Destroying the giant Tenseigan on the moon now is obviously unrealistic, and Naruto hasn't received a gift from the Sage of 6 Paths, so he hasn't reached the 6th-path level yet. However, unlike in the original time and space, Hyojin has Naruto, Xianglin, who has the Rinnegan, Zyuen, who is the complete witch, Gaara, who has the one-tailed human Jinchuriki, Ningxi, who has the dragon bloodline, and Haku, who has the immortal arts. If it's just to stall for time, these forces are enough to deal with Otsutsuki Samurai. However, in the ritual later, Hyojin still needs to use Zyuen, Naruto, Gaara, and Ningxi's chakra. Therefore, the 4 of them will definitely be in a bad state. Xianglin has just used the natural reincarnation technique, and is in a weakened state. Among the 6 of them, only Haku is in good condition. Therefore, under such circumstances, it's not certain if they can stop Otsutsuki Samurai. With that thought in mind, Hyojin gradually made up his mind. I'm asking for monthly votes for the last 2 days of May. Also, I'd like to thank all the students who have gifted me today. Thank you all. Chapter 1338. With Hyojin's current situation, the safest way is naturally to set up a trap to lure Otsutsuki Samurai down from the moon in advance, and then defeat him and eliminate this hidden danger. But he has already used this trick several times before. Especially the last time when the Akatsuki organization attacked Mai. He used the resonance of the Tenseigan to lure Otsutsuki Samurai out, causing Otsutsuki Samurai to almost be sealed by Nagato's Chibaku Tensei and suffer a big loss. With this unforgettable lesson, even if Otsutsuki Samurai lacks experience, he will not be easily fooled again. And the current situation in the shinobi world has reached the most critical moment. The current obsidian has not only become a Jubi's Jinchuriki, possessing the true strength of a six-path shinobi, but he also took advantage of the chaos of the Fourth Shinobi World War to seize the Three Tails and the Seven Tails, allowing the Jubi in his body to further recover. In this situation, Hyojin has no time to slowly plot against Otsutsuki Samurai. Because perhaps before he can plot against Otsutsuki Samurai, Obsidian will have completely swept the shinobi world and found the Rainbow Ice Wall by following various traces. Or, Obsidian will directly launch the Eye of the Moon project, letting the light of infinite Tsukuyomi sprinkle every inch of the shinobi world. At that time, Hyojin's ritual will inevitably be exposed, because the Eye of the Moon project is to reflect the infinite Tsukuyomi on the moon and cover the entire shinobi world through the moon reflection technique. Therefore, once Obsidian launches the infinite Tsukuyomi, then everything in the shinobi world will be reflected in his eyes. Even the Rainbow Ice Wall located in the polar region is no exception. Therefore, the time left for Hyojin is already counting down. If he can't complete the ritual as soon as possible and achieve the immortal Kekii net, then the threat he will face will not only be Otsutsuki Samurai, but also Obsidian as the Jubi's Jinchuriki. The more I delay, the more variables. It was this realization that prompted Hyojin to make up his mind. There is no perfect and foolproof thing in this world. Since he has chosen this rugged path to godhood, he can only abandon all hesitation and fear and move forward. Therefore, Kuroda no longer thought about Otsutsuki Tonari, converged his divergent thoughts, and didn't make any unnecessary movements. He just sat quietly on the altar and used the Grell mineral vein to restore his chakra. After a long time, he slowly opened his eyes and glanced at the clock not far away. According to the clock, it was already past 9 o'clock in the evening, and it was already night in the Land of Fire. Because the Land of Snow was located in the polar region and was in the polar day, there was still light here, and the rainbow over the ice wall still existed. Phew! After exhaling softly, Hyojin stood up and waved to the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets standing beside him. The 3 generations of Kazekage puppets respectfully saluted Hyojin, then used the magnetic release, and quickly flew down from the sky fortress and came to the chakra transportation area. Seeing the arrival of the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets, everyone in the transportation area suddenly understood that Hyojin's ritual was about to begin, so they all looked serious and prepared. Outside the magic circle, Xiang Lin quickly stood up, hurriedly stuffed the last biscuit in her hand into her mouth, and then looked nervously at the sky fortress in the distance. Unlike the others present, she knew Hyojin's bloodline fusion ritual the best. Because only she had watched Hyojin's last ritual, she was very clear about the danger of the bloodline fusion ritual. If the ritual failed, Hyojin was likely to come back to life. Affected by the atmosphere, Haku on the side was also slightly nervous. In the magic circle, Zyuan, Aielo, Ningxi, and even Naruto, who always liked to make fun of people, had a serious expression at the moment, but there was not much tension and worry on their faces. Obviously, they had deep trust in Hyojin, and they all felt that a ritual would not be difficult for Hyojin, even if they did not know what kind of ritual Hyojin was going to perform. On the Sky Fortress, only Hyojin was left. He slowly took out the ghost sprout from the petri dish, and then skillfully implanted it into his body. And with the implantation of the ghost sprout, Hyojin's second bloodline fusion ritual began silently. Because the current Hyojin's strength was much stronger than when he held the first ritual, the suppression of the ghost sprout implanted in his body was also more thorough than the first time. If he did not deliberately relax the suppression, the tyrannical ghost sprout would not even be able to smoothly invade his body. After a while, when the implanted ghost sprout was completely integrated into his body, Hyojin slowly raised his arms and began to form a seal. Ghost Yarrow technique. After completing the hand seal, he didn't waste a single second and immediately shouted, In an instant, the transparent jelly-like sprout penetrated out of his body and quickly expanded. In just a blink of an eye, it piled up more than half of the altar. Hyegen, who had experienced it once, calmly glanced at the 6 clones on the 6 corners of the altar, and then consciously urged the ghost sprout to attack those clones. Clang, clang, clang. In a series of crisp sounds, the portable storage compartment containing the 6 clones was pushed open by the ghost sprout one by one. Then, the ghost sprout invaded the storage compartment with its fangs and claws, and pulled out the clones that were placed inside one after another. Using the corner of his eyes to glance at the 6 clones that were pulled over by the ghost sprout, Hyegen's face was still calm. After a while, the 6 clones were pulled by the ghost sprout and came to the side of Hyegen's body, and all of them were integrated into the ghost sprout, that looked like it was frozen. Just like the previous ceremony, Hyegen's perception also extended out this time, and was no longer limited to the body. Whether it was the ghost sprout or the 6 clones, they all seemed to have become a part of his body at this moment, becoming the carrier of his perception. Moreover, the feeling this time was stronger and clearer than the last time. However, he was not immersed in this strange feeling this time. Instead, his eyes were focused on the body, and he consciously accelerated the progress of the integration. Soon, under his conscious urging, the swollen ghost sprout began to shrink, and was absorbed into his body bit by bit. The 6 clones that were wrapped in the ghost sprout also integrated into his body along with the ghost sprout. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1339. Out of the 4 stages of the ritual, Hyegen had already mastered the first and second stages very thoroughly. Therefore, without much trouble, he completed the first stage, the blood succession fusion, and successfully fused the 6 clones with different attributes into his flight body. Not long after, the swollen and bulging ghost sprouts under his skin gradually calmed down. His body also returned to its original appearance. It was as if the ghost sprouts on his body and the scene of him swallowing the 6 clones in one go were all illusions. At this time, he slowly raised his right hand, and a clear ice crystal that was emitting cold air appeared in the palm of his hand. The corner of his mouth curled up, and he immediately clenched and loosened his palm. The clear ice crystal that was originally floating in his palm became a beautiful purple flame that swayed in the wind. Then, the swaying purple flames disappeared, and a pale white bone blade extended from his palm. Then, the bone blade turned into ashes and scattered with the wind. A sparkling pillar of light appeared in his palm, followed by purple lightning and a tough wooden stake. Retracting his right hand, Hyegen thought to himself, "The effect of the blood succession fusion seems to be better than the last time. Could it be that my previous failed fusion also helped me improve the compatibility between my clones and my main body?" With just a slight attempt, he found that the blood succession limit and blood succession elimination that were fused into his body were more thorough and natural than the last time. Even he himself couldn't explain this situation, so he could only attribute it to the compatibility. After all, these 6 clones had indeed fused with his flight body once. Although they were forcibly separated later on, it was understandable that the compatibility between them had improved. The ritual was still going on. With the completion of the first stage, the blood succession fusion, the second stage of yin-yang integration immediately began. The amount of chakras needed for the second stage was 10 times that of the first stage. Therefore, Hyegen didn't use his own chakra to resist it. Instead, he absorbed the chakra in the distant chakra transportation area. In an instant, the 4 people in the transportation area's magic circle sensed it. Ziyuan, who was eager to try, mustered her strength and prepared herself. However, she realized that her chakra wasn't being absorbed. She was stunned and looked to the side suspiciously. Next to her, Gara was the first to react. his tailed beast chakra started flowing into the magic circle. Next was Ningxi. Finally, Naruto and his clone's immortal tailed beast chakra slowly flowed into the magic circle. Izuyuan looked down at the motionless magic circle under her feet. Her face was filled with confusion. On the altar, Kuroto, who is in the second stage of the ritual, is still at ease, while accurately controlling the chakra transmission area, and at the same time fusing the power of the omniscient nature within his body. While performing the second stage of the ritual, Hyojin was still able to control the magic circle of the chakra transportation area with ease. It was best to use the chakra source that could be activated at any time during the final stage of the ritual, such as the giant Tenseigan, grayer mineral vein, sky spear, and so on. As for the chakra source like Zyuan, Gaara, Naruto, and Ningxi, he had priority. Among them, Gaara and Ningxi had the highest priority, followed by Naruto, and finally Zyuan. This was mainly because Zyuan's strength was the closest to the six-path level. She was also good at various sealing techniques. She was the best candidate to deal with any changes. Therefore, Hyojin wanted to preserve Zyuan's state as much as possible. Because it was as easy as the first stage, Hyojin didn't encounter any trouble in the second stage. He easily broke through the barrier and once again completed the yin and yang fusion, obtaining the ability to create the black stick. From this moment on, Hyojin had all the conditions to break through to the six-path level. At this time, he only needed to add the water, fire, wind, earth, and thunder attributes of the chakra to the second stage, and upgrade the yin and yang attributes of the chakra to the yin and yang attributes of the five elements. Then, he could enter the third stage of the ritual and officially break through to the six-path level. However, because of the lesson learned from the previous ritual, he didn't rush to enter the third stage. Instead, he used the Tenseigan in his eye socket to suppress the Anabi in his body with the Tenseigan's pupil power. Sure enough, with the comprehensive suppression of the ghost sprout in his body, he quickly found that the ghost sprout that had experienced the first and second stages of the ritual grew very terrifying. The honesty at this time was completely a disguise. Once he rushed into the third stage like last time, the ghost sprout would immediately take advantage of his distraction to come out. After patiently forcing the ghost sprout out of his body with the Tenseigan's pupil power, Hyojin backhand used ice release, using an extremely low temperature to suppress the activity of the ghost sprout. Then, he used rain pull to break the frozen ghost sprout into pieces of broken ice and scattered in the air with the wind. The defect of the ghost sprout, increasing activity at high temperature and decreasing activity at low temperature, was deliberately done by Hyojin. The purpose was to make it convenient to deal with. Otherwise, it would take a lot of effort to deal with the ghost sprout that became stronger with the ritual. It would never be as easy as now. After solving the hidden danger of the ghost sprout, Hyojin took a deep breath and glanced at the deep sky above his head. Then, he stepped into the third stage without hesitation. At this stage, Hyojin was not as confident as before. After all, he died in this stage last time. The chakra's amount required for the third stage of the ritual was 10 times that of the second stage. So, Hyojin did not hesitate and immediately increased the absorption of chakra from Gaara, Ningxi, and Naruto on the magic circle. In an instant, the huge flow of chakra flowed along the magic circle and gathered fiercely on the altar. At this time, Hyojin could no longer suppress the movement of the ritual, so he simply stopped suppressing it. While absorbing the chakra from the magic circle without any scruples, he completely carried out the fusion of yin and yang, 5 elements, and 7 types of chakra in his body. So, a ray of light surged from the altar and went straight into the sky. On the moon, Otsutsuki Samurai, who was practicing in the practice field, suddenly froze and stopped his movements. Then, the pure white eyes in his eyes suddenly turned into the Tenseigan that shone like the stars. As he activated his Tenseigan, His vision immediately connected with the giant Tenseigan enshrined in the lookout and instantly obtained the vision of the giant Tenseigan peeping into the shinobi world. The second update is here. It's the last day of May. Those who still have monthly votes, don't save them anymore. After today, the monthly votes will be refreshed. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1340. Thump. Thump, with a sound like a heartbeat, the giant Tenseigan enshrined in the Otsutsuki shrine suddenly emitted a brilliant halo, and then the vision of the giant Tenseigan began to gradually focus on the shinobi world. With the help of the giant Tenseigan's vision, Otsutsuki Samurai began to spy on the shinobi world. His eyes first locked on the territory of the Land of Fire, locked on the incomparably tall Susanoo that are fighting fiercely, and his expression changed slightly. The fierce battle of those Susanoo is completely beyond the scope of ordinary ninjas. The mountain-like Susanoo was like a god, and every move it made had great power. Wherever it went, whether it was the forest, the mountains, or the lakes, they were all ravaged, leaving only a mess. This kind of fierce battle that is rarely seen in 100 years, it's hard for Otsutsuki Samurai not to pay attention to it. But his eyes didn't stay there for too long, because he knew that this is not his target, so he controlled the giant Tenseigan to shift his vision and scanned other places. However, just as his vision shifted, his sweeping gaze paused again. Because he found that in another part of the Land of Fire, that is, the periphery of the Mai village, another terrifying battle is taking place. There, countless trees are growing crazily, the scale is so large, and the chakra fluctuations are so strong that even Kuroto felt a burst of palpitation. And fighting against the sea of trees are several ninjas wearing the clothes of tailed beasts. For some reason, these ninjas are wearing the clothes of tailed beasts, which makes Kuroto instinctively feel fear. What happened in the shinobi world? For a moment, a doubt surged in Otsutsuki Samurai's heart. Although he doesn't have a complete grasp of the situation in the shinobi world, he knows that a fierce battle of this scale is definitely unusual in the shinobi world, not to mention two at the same time. Even the most slow-witted person, after discovering this situation, will realize that some kind of war is likely to be going on in the shinobi world, or some kind of revolution. With this thought, Otsutsuki Samurai restrained the uneasiness in his eyes and regained his calmness. His calmness was not without reason. Now that he has his own pair of Tenseigan, coupled with the giant Tenseigan that belongs to the Otsutsuki clan, no matter what happens in the shinobi world, Kuroto doesn't think that it can threaten him. It is this transcendent state of mind that made Kuroto continue searching the shinobi world. Although the two ongoing battles are eye-catching, they are not his goal. What he is really looking for is the mysterious chakra fluctuations that resonated with his Tenseigan just now. After checking the entire continent, Otsutsuki Samurai, who didn't find anything, is puzzled and controls the giant Tenseigan's vision to a more remote polar area. Tenseigan? In an instant, Otsutsuki Samurai's expression turned cold, and his face revealed an uncontrollable shock. Through the vision of the giant Tenseigan, Kuroto was shocked to discover the pillar of light located in the rainbow ice wall of the Land of Snow, as well as the figure of Hyojin standing in the center of the altar. If it was only the huge chakra fluctuations, it would not make Otsutsuki Samurai lose his composure like this. What really shocked Otsutsuki Samurai is that he discovered that the Hyuga standing in the center of the altar has a pair of Tenseigan in his eye sockets. One must know that even as a direct descendant of Himura, it took him a lot of effort and many hardships to obtain the Tenseigan, so it is really difficult for him to accept that a lowly Hyuga clansman has the same eyes as him. Moreover, he doesn't know if it is an illusion or not, but he faintly feels that the Tenseigan of this Hyuga seems to be purer and more brilliant than his Tenseigan. This is impossible! Otsutsuki Samurai roared hysterically, and there was no longer any calmness on his face. the noble and pure bloodline, as well as the extremely powerful Tenseigan, are the bottom line that he adheres to and the reverse scale that no one is allowed to touch. Anyone who dares to touch these is his intolerable enemy. But since the opponent also has the Tenseigan, he can't underestimate the enemy, so he forcibly suppressed his monstrous anger and observed carefully on the altar. Hyojin's face was still calm, and he tried to integrate the nature of the yin-yang 5 elements and the 7 types of chakra in an orderly manner. As for the gaze cast by the giant Tenseigan on the moon, he noticed it immediately, and this is something he expected, so his emotions did not fluctuate too much, and he turned a blind eye to Otsutsuki Samurai's malicious peeping, and still focused on his ritual. And after the ritual advanced to this stage, a large amount of chakra was needed to maintain it at all times. Therefore, Hyojin had to increase the extraction of chakra from Gaara, Ningxi, and Naruto in the magic circle, and gradually began to extract Zyuan's chakra. In the magic circle, Gaara was sweating profusely and Ningxi's face was pale. Among the 4 people who entered the magic circle, although the 2 of them were both Jinchuriki, monsters in the eyes of normal ninjas, they were obviously inferior to Zyuan and Naruto. In addition, Hyojin deliberately extracted the chakra from the 2 of them, so the 2 of them were the first to show signs of exhaustion. And of Naruto's dozen shadow clones, 6 or 7 had been sucked dry by Hyojin, and the remaining 6 or 7 were still struggling. Just like that, time passed little by little. Otsutsuki Samurai did not appear immediately, and Hyojin did not care too much. At this time, he was gradually immersed in the nature fusion of the yin-yang 5 elements chakra. The truth-seeking ball was the product of the fusion of the yin-yang 5 elements chakra, so the nature fusion of the 7 chakra attributes was not only a way to improve strength, but also a way to complete the transition of life. Compared with swallowing chakra fruit, inheriting it from one's parents, receiving gifts from the strong, and so on, Suijin's method of breaking through to the 6th-path level by completing the fusion of the yin-yang 5 elements and chakra properties is actually simpler and more down-to-earth. On the contrary, the Otsutsuki family's method of planting the divine tree, using the divine tree to absorb the natural energy of the entire planet, and then condensing the chakra fruit was undoubtedly more convenient. Bang bang, another 2 muffled sounds came from the array. Following the muffled sounds of the 2 shadow clones shattering, there were no more shadow clones left in the array. The shadow clones of Zyuan and Naruto had been sucked dry by Hyojin. At this time, on the array, Alo and Ningxi were obviously unable to hold on any longer. Their bodies began to tremble, and one of their tails and dragon veins were almost exhausted. Zyuan and Naruto were slightly better off, but they were also severely exhausted and panting. On the altar, as if he had sensed something, Kuroto's expression changed. With a snap, he put his palms together. Then, a black truth-seeking ball appeared behind him as he wished. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. In addition to the ability to resist attacks, another benefit of the 6th-path life level is that the lifespan has become longer. Because at this time, whether it is the body or the spirit body, it can be directly transformed into chakra, and chakra is energy and is not bound by birth, aging, illness, and death. So once you officially enter the 6th-path level, it means that you will no longer be bound by cell aging, and you will not die early because of the limit of cell division, even though you have an unparalleled recovery ability. As for how long the lifespan is, Hyojin can't accurately estimate for a while, but at least about 1,000 years. Anyway, as long as you are not like the 6th-path sage, who divided the Jubi, established a shinobi sect to pass chakra to all living beings, have children, and pass power to your son, there is no problem to live for thousands of years. After all, when Otsutsuki Kagaya arrived in the shinobi world, his strength was certainly not enough for the bloodline net, and it takes 1,000 years for the holy tree to grow, so if Kagaya does not have 1,000 years of life, it is impossible to keep the holy tree blooming and bearing fruit. From this, it can be seen that as long as you don't cause trouble and live honestly, the lifespan of a six-path is at least 1,000 years. But if you reproduce a large number of children and consume chakra needlessly, then your lifespan is likely to plummet. The two six-path sage brothers are the best example. One of them established a shinobi sect, and the other reproduced an entire clan on the moon. Needlessly consuming too much chakra caused them to exhaust their lifespan early, so they had to give up their bodies and stay in the world in a less energy-consuming form. As for Toad Maru, who had been by their side all those years ago, he had now become the great toad sage of Mount Mayaboku. He was still alive and well. After a short pause, the ceremony inevitably continued. With the condensation of the truth-seeking ball, and with the transition of life level, the third stage of the ceremony was successfully completed. What awaits Hyojin is the fourth stage that he has never stepped into before. This is the last stage of the ritual, and as long as he survives this stage, his level of life will undergo a second transition, and he will become an immortal existence just like Kagaya. Even if he has children, even if he consumes chakra at will, he will still be an immortal existence. And the amount of chakra's amount required for the fourth stage is unknown to Hyojin. It is likely to be more than 10 times the amount required for the third stage, so without any hesitation, he immediately unsealed all the seals on the Spear of Heaven and the Greyer Mine, and activated the geothermal meter at full power, completely activating the entire rainbow ice wall system that he designed. Boom! With a series of explosions, the geothermal meter at full power cooperated with the Spear of Heaven to absorb the energy of the nearby earth veins, converting the energy of the earth veins into chakra light pillar, and shooting it out. And the chakra light pillar from the Spear of Heaven tower hit the Greyer Mine, floating in the air. In an instant, the two huge chakra, one yin and one yang, began to violently fuse. For a moment, the entire rainbow ice wall shone brightly, so bright that people couldn't even open their eyes. Hyojin, who was standing in the middle of the altar, was close to the water, and easily absorbed this huge amount of chakra. Chakra transport area. Wow! Looking at this earth-shattering scene, the few of them had thousands of words to say, but in the end they could only say one word. Because they really couldn't find any other words to describe the shocking scene in front of them. They could only open their mouths and let out sighs filled with emotion and amazement. Swoosh! At this moment, a figure wrapped in light blue Tenseigan chakra descended from the sky, and like a meteor, it pounced towards the rainbow ice wall. It's been 6 months, please give me your guaranteed monthly tickets. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1342. It's reasonable to celebrate Children's Day on June 1st, so I wish everyone a happy holiday. Oh, __. Oh, also, it's a new month, a new week, so I'm begging everyone for their guaranteed monthly votes and recommendation votes. Students who have the ability, please come and support the original version. Everyone's subscriptions and tips are the only income that a small-time writer like me can make a living, so I'm begging everyone. I won't force anyone to give me tips, but if you have the ability to subscribe, please support me. Thanks. The world of Naruto in the Eyes of Reincarnation wishes everyone a happy June 1st Children's Day. Currently typing, please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1343. Without a doubt, the figure descending from the sky like a meteor was Otsutsuki Samurai, who had been spying on Hyojin from the moon. With the previous lessons, he did not show himself immediately this time. Instead, he suppressed his complicated feelings and carefully observed Hyojin's every move. When he realized that Hyojin had condensed the truth-seeking ball in his normal state on the altar, he was shocked. He once again took Hyojin more seriously, and officially regarded Hyojin as his mortal enemy. At the same time, after careful observation, he also found some clues. He knew that Hyojin was in some kind of ritual, and as the ritual progressed, Hyojin's strength was rising rapidly. It seemed that the 6th Daos level, which could condense the truth-seeking ball, was not the end. After determining this point, he could no longer hold himself back. On the altar, glancing at Otsutsuki Samurai, who was attacking aggressively from the sky, Hyojin's face was still calm. As he had entered the 4th stage of the ritual, which he had never set foot in before, it was difficult for him to spare any energy to deal with Otsutsuki Samurai. This was because his body was absorbing the chakra on the altar, maintaining the final nature fusion of the yin, yang, 5 elements and 7 elements chakra in his body. As long as he completed the final nature fusion of the chakra attributes, he would be able to experience another leap in life level, and advance to the bloodline network that he had been dreaming of. Otsutsuki Samurai's attack at this time could be said to have hit him in the back. But even so, Hyojin's expression remained the same. After experiencing the previous failure, he did not expect his ritual to be completely undisturbed. To be more precise, breaking through the blood succession net was not something that could be done quietly. The birth of a bloodline succession net was bound to shake the entire planet. This is the same no matter where he hides. Even if he hides on the moon, Hyojin is very sure that as he progresses deeper into the 4th stage, the movement on his side will become bigger and bigger, and the phenomenon produced by the final ritual is likely to affect the entire shinobi world. Therefore, any external interference was within Hyojin's expectations. In fact, it could even be considered as a part of the ritual. Since he had chosen to break through to the utmost realm, there was no way he could retreat. Therefore, anxiety, hesitation, worry, and other emotions became meaningless at this moment. They wouldn't be able to change anything. Calmly retracting his gaze, Hyojin no longer paid attention to Otsutsuki Samurai who was rushing toward him. As if the crisis did not exist, he focused on his ritual. Inside the chakra transport area, looking at Otsutsuki Samurai who had activated the Tenseigan chakra mode, everyone present was shocked. Even the 9 tails in Naruto's body was no exception. Tenseigan? And Ningxi's expression was the most shocked. He subconsciously wanted to stand up, but as soon as he got up, his legs softened, and he fell back to the array. Obviously, the chakra that Hyojin had just extracted was beyond the normal range that he could bear, so at this moment, not to mention fighting, it was very difficult for him to even stand. Naruto was also surprised. Is it an enemy? Yeah. Haku nodded, and without hesitation, he immediately flashed to meet him. Because Otsutsuki Samurai's malice was too obvious and he did not hide it at all, so Zyuen, Haku, and even Naruto, who had mastered the spirit arts, could clearly feel it. With just a few ups and downs, Haku, who was responsible for guarding the ritual, arrived at the outermost boundary area of the ritual. Suddenly putting his palms together, Haku, who had long been prepared for battle, instantly entered the spirit mode, and then shouted softly, "Spirit Arts, Super Ice Timely Rain." In an instant, thousands of ice thousand books with a cold light condensed around Haku, pointing at the sky where Otsutsuki Samurai was attacking at high speed. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh then, these countless ice thousand books with a whistling sound, attacked Otsutsuki Samurai overwhelmingly. In the air, Otsutsuki Samurai did not care about Haku, who was blocking him. At this time, his eyes were still focused on Hyojin in the center of the altar in the distance, so when he saw the ice thousand books that covered the sky and the earth like raindrops, he waved his hand impatiently. "Get lost!" Boom! A huge repulsive force suddenly formed, repelling thousands of ice thousand books in an instant, and the aftermath even set off a snowstorm, surging on the boundary, causing the solid boundary wall to shake violently. Seeing this, Haku was stunned. He had guessed that the enemy would be very strong, but he did not expect it to be this strong. The spirit arts that he had used with all his strength was easily broken by the enemy with a wave of his hand. His heart trembled. Haku came to a realization: such a strong enemy must not be allowed to enter the boundary and interfere with the ceremony, so Haku immediately began to form a one-handed seal with each hand, and shouted, "Spirit Arts, Ice Tornado! Spirit Arts, Magic Mirror Ice Crystal!" Roar, accompanied by a series of roars, several ice dragons rose from the ground, attacking Otsutsuki Samurai in the air. At the same time, clear ice mirrors appeared out of thin air, forming a huge ice wall in the air, blocking Otsutsuki Samurai's way. Seeing several ice dragons attacking, Otsutsuki Samurai waved his hands, wanting to use the giant Tenseigan's ability to absorb all these ice dragons, and then release the ice dragons to destroy the ice wall blocking his way. But as soon as he raised his hand, a strange expression flashed between his eyebrows, because he found that he could not absorb these ice release ninjutsu. Boom! In this moment of hesitation, Otsutsuki Samurai in the air was hit by several ice dragons, and with the impact of the ice dragons, he fell to the ice field on the ground. Swish! At this time, Haku's figure flashed, and he also jumped out of the boundary and came to the ice field. Separated by a barrier, inside was an oasis that was like spring all year round, was the rainbow ice wall that shone with rays of light, and outside was the unchanging 10,000-mile ice plains of the snow country. Walking out of the broken ice unscathed, Otsutsuki Samurai in the Tenseigan chakra mode had a cold expression on his face. In front of him, Haku, who was dressed as the Suijin of Amatsukami, was no stranger to him. In the previous spying, he saw these people around Hyojin, but he completely ignored these ninjas of lowly bloodline, and did not see them as a threat, so when Haku stopped him, he was a little annoyed. "You should be proud to be killed by me with my own hands." After saying this indifferently, Otsutsuki Samurai raised his right hand slightly, and in an instant, a few ink-colored truth-seeking balls merged into his palm, turning into a brilliant golden sword. The first update, the first day of June, asking for a guaranteed monthly ticket. Chapter 1344. Looking at the dazzling golden sword in Otsutsuki Samurai's hand, Bai was shocked. He had seen Hyojin use this technique before. At that time, Hyojin was like a deity. He had easily cut off the arm of the heretic demon statue that was protecting Nagato and repelled the arrogant Nagato. Therefore, Bai was very clear about the power of this technique. Therefore, he did not take any chances and squeezed every bit of the immortal technique chakra out of his body. He shouted, "Immortal technique, Super Ice Stone Hall!" Whoosh! Along with a series of freezing sounds, a solid wall of ice appeared in front of Bai one after another. Unlike the magic mirror ice crystal that could be used for both offense and defense, Super Ice Stone Hall was an ice release ninjutsu that Bai used specifically for defense. Coupled with the home advantage of Snow Country and the enhancement of the Immortal Technique Chakra, this was the ultimate defensive ninjutsu that Bai could perform at the moment. Humph! Looking at the layers of solid ice walls in front of him, Otsutsuki Samurai snorted coldly. Then, he quickly slashed down with his right hand that was holding the golden sword. Rumble, accompanied by the dazzling golden light, Bai's strongest defensive immortal technique collapsed in the rumble like tofu under a sharp knife. It did not even have the ability to block Bai's attack. Although he was mentally prepared, the scene in front of him still made Bai feel a deep sense of powerlessness. However, he did not forget his duty. Immediately, under the cover of the ice fog and ice shards, he began to form hand seals again and shouted, "Immortal Technique, Super Ice Coffin." In an instant, the rapidly frozen ice rushed towards Otsutsuki Samurai. Otsutsuki Samurai frowned, as if he had exhausted his patience. The dazzling golden sword in his hand suddenly turned into a storm and went against Bai's immortal technique Ice Release. Rumble in the midst of the rumble, a huge storm swept everything. Be it the immortal technique that Bai had just performed, the ice shards and mist in the air, or the ice plains that covered the ground, everything in Otsutsuki Samurai's field of vision was engulfed by the storm. Bai, who was in front of them, was no exception. When the storm came, he was swept into the air by the storm without the slightest resistance. Like an ant, he could only go with the flow of the storm. Oh no! When he realized that the storm had not only engulfed his celestial technique, but its momentum was also not reduced. Instead, it was pouncing toward the barrier not far away. Bai, who was thrown into the air, immediately cried out in surprise. However, right at this moment, a brand new barrier appeared and blocked the storm. Boom! Another loud sound rang out, and the storm that hit the barrier was finally stopped. Large cracks appeared on the barrier, and when the storm subsided, the barrier collapsed. At that moment, a figure appeared behind the shattered barrier. Otsutsuki Samurai glanced at it casually and realized that the figure was wearing the same attire as the person who had performed Ice Release just now. However, the pattern of the mask on his face had changed from a river to a sun. Without a doubt, the person who had performed the barrier and blocked Otsutsuki Samurai's silver wheel reincarnation explosion was none other than Ziyuan. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly, hundreds of Naruto, who were in the Nine Tails chakra mode, pushed the Rasengan in their hands and pounced toward Otsutsuki Samurai from all directions. Otsutsuki Samurai was slightly stunned. He was no stranger to shadow clones, but this number was obviously beyond his expectations. While he was in a daze, Naruto's shadow clones had already rushed in front of him, and countless Rasengan shining with a halo were about to hit him. Otsutsuki Samurai suddenly moved, and a few truth-seeking balls instantly turned into an ink-colored black ball, covering his whole body. Boom boom boom. The Rasengan that came one after another hit the black ball that Otsutsuki Samurai's truth-seeking ball had turned into, making a deafening roar. But after the smoke dissipated, the group of Naruto's shadow clones were surprised to find that the black ball that had withstood hundreds of their Rasengan attacks was not damaged at all. There was not even a slight dent, let alone a gap. At this time, the black ball dissipated, revealing the slightly anxious Otsutsuki Samurai inside. At this time, in Otsutsuki Samurai's eyes, there was only Hyojin on the altar in the distance. He didn't pay attention to anyone else, so after being blocked again and again, he was both annoyed and a little uneasy, because he could clearly feel that Hyojin in the distance was improving every moment. This terrifying speed of improvement made him feel uneasy from the bottom of his heart. He had a feeling that if he couldn't stop the other party as soon as possible and destroy the other party's ritual, then he would forever lose the chance to defeat the other party. This was his last chance to win. At this point, Otsutsuki Samurai no longer had the mood to entangle with these ninjas in front of him, so he suddenly launched Rain Pull, and in an instant hundreds of Naruto's shadow clones around him flew out. Immediately, his body swayed, and he jumped into the air, preparing to pounce on the rainbow ice wall not far away. Demon Sealing Coffin Seal. While Naruto was attracting the attention of the other party, Ziyuan, who had completed the preoperative preparation, finally launched her Miko's sealing technique. In an instant, several light walls formed a cube like a wooden box and rapidly shrank, including the Otsutsuki Tonari, who was leaping in the air. After a while, Haku, who was in a mess, and Naruto, who was panting, rushed to Ziyuan one after another and asked, "Is it settled?" "Yes." Ziyuan nodded while panting heavily. Demon Sealing Coffin is the most common sealing technique used by the Miko in the land of demons. Before, the Miko used this sealing technique to deal with Morio. On the formation, "Great! We finally blocked it. Ningxi and Gaara also breathed a sigh of relief. Originally, they also wanted to help deal with Otsutsuki Samurai, but their chakra's amount is far less than Zyuan and Naruto, so now they can't participate in the battle at all. Kacha, however, just when everyone thought that the matter was over, a cracking sound suddenly came from Zyuan's demon sealing coffin. Immediately after, a brilliant golden sword pierced out from it, sprinkling golden light all over the ice field. Zyuan was shocked. How is this possible? Haku and Naruto on the side were also shocked. Obviously, everyone didn't know that the Tenseigan could resist the seal for a short time. Back then, Hyojin, who was sealed by Nagato's earth-exploding heavenly star, also used this very short gap to break the earth-exploding heavenly star with Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion to break the earth-exploding heavenly star. At this time, the brilliant golden sword pierced out from the demon sealing coffin, slowly slashing down. While cutting the demon sealing coffin, the blade that stretched out far away also took advantage of the earth-exploding heavenly star. On the altar, Hyojin still looked indifferent, and there was no emotion in his eyes. Here's the second update. Please continue to ask for a guaranteed monthly ticket. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1345. Under the dazzling golden sword of Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, all the obstacles in front of it were like fluffy white snow on the ice field, so pale and powerless. Rumble in the deafening roar, Zyuan's demon sealing coffin was shattered and scattered on the ground. Not only that, when the golden sword smashed the demon sealing coffin, it also left a huge sword mark on the ground. This sword mark was like a ravine, extending out for hundreds of meters, cutting a huge gap in the barrier not far away. Huff, in an instant, the fierce wind on the ice field outside the barrier, carrying the broken ice and cold mist in the air, poured into the barrier through this gap. On the spell formation. So strong. Gaara and Ningxi, who were sweating profusely, were shocked by the incoming cold wind, and their bodies suddenly trembled. Of course, what made their bodies tremble was not only the sudden drop in temperature, but also the terrifying godlike strength of Otsutsuki Samurai outside the barrier. At this time, Otsutsuki Samurai, holding the golden sword in his hand, slowly walked out of the wreckage of the demon sealing coffin, his expression extremely cold. "You lowly ninjas, you are too presumptuous." He could not tolerate these ants in front of him, provoking him again and again, and at such a critical moment. Zyuan said, "It was you who came looking for trouble." Haku echoed, "Well, it was you who came looking for trouble. We will never allow you to destroy Lord's ceremony." Naruto also nodded, his hands assuming a posture of continuing to make hand seals. At this time, Otsutsuki Samurai glanced at the altar in the distance, seeing that the chakra fluctuation on Hyojin's body was getting stronger and stronger, so strong that he, who had the Tenseigan, felt extremely uneasy, so his face darkened. "Then all of you can go to hell." He had no intention of venting his anger on these ants, not because he was kind, but purely because he felt that these lowly ants in front of him were not worthy to fight with him. But right now, Hyojin on the altar was giving him too much pressure, so he did not care about his identity anymore. So, he raised his right hand that was holding the golden sword, and the 6 truth-seeking balls floating behind him instantly merged into the golden sword in his hand. Whoosh! Instantly, the already dazzling golden sword became even more brilliant, shining like the sun, making it hard to look at it directly. Not only that, but the length of the golden sword also increased exponentially. From its original length of over 100 meters, it continued to extend upwards until it reached the clouds. Zyuan, Naruto, and Haku, who were standing in front of the Otsutsuki Tonari, all raised their heads subconsciously and looked at the sky in horror. They looked at the brilliant golden sword that went straight into the clouds and could not be seen at a glance. On an ice cliff a dozen miles away from the rainbow ice wall, little Snow, who was temporarily detained there, had her eyes wide and her mouth agape. In her field of vision, there were two pillars of light standing side by side, with no end in sight, that shot into the clouds. One of them was the colorful pillar of light above the rainbow ice wall, and the other was the dazzling golden sword that no one could look at directly. Looking at this miraculous scene, she was momentarily speechless. She could not say anything and could only exclaim in her heart, "Is this a power that humans can possess?" Zyuan, Naruto, and Bai, who were close to the dazzling golden sword that had no end in sight, felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave. If this sword successfully slashed down, then it would not just be a matter of destroying the rainbow ice wall. It was very likely that the entire snow country, the entire polar region, would be split in half, cut in half. Whoosh! At this moment, a figure leaped out of the crowd and pounced towards Otsutsuki Samurai, who was holding the golden sword. Zyuan's gaze froze. She was shocked to find that the figure that had leaped past her and pounced towards Otsutsuki Samurai was none other than Xianglin, who was also a young god like her. Therefore, before her brain could react, her body made a conditioned reflex and quickly chased after Xianglin. No matter what, she could not lose to Xianglin. Naruto and Bai, who were at the side, did not have such a conditioned reflex. They were both stunned. However, their reactions were not slow. Seeing that the two young gods dared to fight against such a terrifying golden sword, they looked at each other and pounced forward as well. Humph! Otsutsuki Samurai, who was holding the golden sword, snorted softly. His eyes were full of contempt. He directly ignored Xianglin, Zyuan, and the others who were rushing towards him, and cast his eyes on Hyojin, who was on the distant altar. The golden wheel reincarnation explosion, which was supported by the giant Tenseigan, was enough to sweep away everything. Therefore, Otsutsuki Samurai was ready to destroy Hyojin's ritual in one fell swoop. He wanted to destroy Hyojin's ritual with a thunderous force and kill the huge threat in advance. However, just as Otsutsuki Samurai ignored Xianglin, Zyuan, and the others, Xianglin's Rinnegan, which was under the young god mask, suddenly bloomed with a strange brilliance. In an instant, a blood mist emerged. The appearance of this blood mist was very strange. There was no time for it to spread, but it suddenly enveloped a large area, as if it had overlapped from another time and space. It enveloped Xianglin, Otsutsuki Samurai, and Zyuan, who was closest to it. Then, the blood mist disappeared into thin air as it appeared. Xianglin, Otsutsuki Tonari, and Zyuan, who were shrouded in the blood mist, disappeared together with him. Naruto and Haku, who were a little slower, suddenly stopped and looked around in horror, only to find that Otsutsuki Samurai had indeed disappeared. The golden sword that had soared into the sky had also disappeared with the disappearance of the blood mist. What happened? Naruto asked in a daze. Haku shook his head with a confused look on his face. The moment the blood mist appeared, all his senses were blocked by it. He had no idea what had happened in the blood mist. Before he could react, the blood mist disappeared into thin air. At this time, Ninth Lama, who was in Naruto's body, said in a deep voice, "Don't look for them. It's a space-time ninjutsu. They are no longer here. In a different space." In the blink of an eye, the three of them followed the blood mist to a different space that was filled with a faint mist. Everything in sight was gray. Only a long, bloody river was particularly eye-catching. It meandered all the way into the mist. Even Otsutsuki Samurai, who had the Tenseigan, could not see the end of the river. And on the surface of the blood-red river, there were vague outlines of spiritual bodies. These spiritual bodies rose and fell on the surface of the blood-red river, as if they were struggling, but also seemed to be roaring. It was a chilling sight to behold. Standing on the shore, Otsutsuki Samurai's expression changed slightly. He asked, "What is this place?" I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1346. Faced with Otsutsuki Tonari's question, Xiang Lin, who was half squatting on the ground and panting, casually picked up a beautiful spider lily by his feet and said in a deep voice, "This is the Styx River's Sunju River." The space-time dojitsu that Xiang Lin comprehended not long ago is none other than the dojitsu Mitsurugi that Danzo used to cast with his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. However, as the ultimate technique of the Rinnegan, Xiang Lin's technique is slightly different from the one that Danzo used when he was in the Manjikyu Sharingan. Danzo's technique is to summon and control a section of the river Styx to assist him in battle. On the other hand, Xiang Yu's pupil technique is a kind of space-time pupil technique, and its level is also a step higher. It can directly open a passage between the real underworld and the shinobi world. Ziyuan on the side didn't have any stage fright. She coldly stared at Otsutsuki Samurai. "You want to interfere with Lord's ceremony? Kill us first." Otsutsuki Tonari's brows furrowed as he slowly looked around. A desolate and deathly silent environment, a thin mist that was suffused with the aura of death, and a long river that was like blood that had no end. Merely based on these, he'd already vaguely guessed where this place was, and after he heard Xiang Lin say that this was the Three Roads River, the last bit of hope in his heart was completely crushed. River Styx, Otsutsuki Samurai's face became gloomier and gloomier. Tenseigan is good at everything: melee combat, long-range attack, X-ray vision, insight, controlling spirit bodies, controlling puppets, resisting seals, and so on. There are almost no shortcomings, the only weakness is the time and space ability. This is not only for Otsutsuki Samurai, but also for Hyojin. In the face of space-time ninjutsu, the Tenseigan's powerful insight and superior maneuverability, coupled with rain pull, allows the possessor of the Tenseigan to evade almost all space-time ninjutsu in time. But once he is hit and transferred to a different space, then the owner of the Tenseigan will be very passive. This was just like Hyojin, who had been unable to take advantage of Obsidian's victory many times, and Otsutsuki Samurai, who had been transferred to the river Styx by Xiang Lin due to underestimating Obsidian. Trying to communicate with the giant Tenseigan of the Otsutsuki clan, Otsutsuki Samurai's expression quickly stiffened. Although Kuroto can vaguely sense the giant Tenseigan, this feeling is very faint, and he must try to communicate with it for a long time before he can get out of this predicament with the help of the giant Tenseigan he left in the shinobi world. In other words, for a short period of time, he was trapped here, trapped next to the river Styx that carried the never-ending flow of undead. Opposite, Xiang Lin, who was half squatting, slowly stood up. Ziyuan leaned close to Xiang Lin's ear and whispered, "We can still go back, right?" Xiang Lin shook his head. "I don't know." It has only been a few minutes since Xiang Lin comprehended this space-time Tenseigan, so he is still very unfamiliar with this Tenseigan technique. In addition, using the Rebirth Heaven technique to resurrect Hyojin consumed too much Tenseigan power, so at this moment, even Xiang Lin himself is not 100% sure that he can smoothly return to the shinobi world. A trace of panic flashed in Ziyuan's eyes under the mask. But soon she restrained her panic, pretended to be calm in front of Xiang Lin and said, "It's not a big deal, after sealing that guy we can slowly find the way back." Otsutsuki Samurai, who looked around, looked at Xiang Lin and Ziyuan in front of him, and finally his eyes fell on the coquettish red spider lily in Xiang Lin's hand. He knew that it was his negligence that caused him to fall into the current predicament. Annoyed, he couldn't help but carefully look at the two ninjas in front of him wearing a black cloak with golden edges and a mask with a sun pattern on their heads. He has seen this outfit more than once before. When he attacked Richa, he was disturbed by a ninja dressed in the same outfit and wearing a rock pattern mask on his face. In the fierce battle with Nagato not long ago, He also found several ninjas in the same outfit on the sidelines. It seems that they are not ordinary ninjas. After thinking for a while, Otsutsuki Samurai asked, "Who are you?" Xiang Lin and Ziyuan slowly threw the coquettish red spider lily in their hands into the river Styx, and said in unison, "Amatsukumi's young god." In the holy power space, Obsidian, who was continuing to sense one tail and 9 tails, suddenly changed his expression. Zetsu, who was beside him, asked, "Did you find anything?" "Yes, I sensed 9 tails." Obsidian nodded lightly. Zetsu hurriedly asked, "Where?" Obsidian frowned. "It's very far from the country of fire, it seems to be in the polar region. As for the specific location, I need to go to the ninja world first before I can try to lock it down." Zetsu laughed. "It seems that the 5 great ninja villages have made preparations. They actually hid 9 tails in that kind of place." Obsidian looked disdainful. "No matter where they hide 9 tails, it's meaningless." After saying that, Obsidian's figure swayed and disappeared into the vortex that suddenly appeared. Looking at Obsidian leaving in a hurry, the corners of Black Jew's mouth curled up rainbow ice wall. On the altar, Hyojin felt the chill rushing in from the broken barrier. His gaze shifted slightly and he glanced at the gap in the barrier that was cut by Otsutsuki Samurai's golden wheel reincarnation explosion, as well as Naruto and Bai who were standing outside the gap at a loss. Naruto rushed out of the barrier, which meant that he was now exposed to Obsidian's perception. Therefore, Hyojin did not hesitate at all and directly dispelled the previous psychic technique. Bang! With a muffled sound, Naruto turned into a puff of white smoke and disappeared on the spot. Naruto was originally forced to come here by the psychic technique. Therefore, as long as Hyojin dispelled the psychic technique, he could use the power of the contract to instantly send Naruto back to where he was before the psychic technique, which was the battlefield outside Mai. As for the safety of Naruto, Xianglin, Ziyuan, and the others, Hyojin was not worried. Naruto had the protection of the Six Paths deity, so the probability of him dying was very low. Even if Naruto, Xianglin, and Ziyuan all died in battle, as long as he could complete the blood succession net, resurrecting a few people would be a piece of cake for him. Therefore, after making sure that Ailua was still in the formation and that First Tail's aura was not leaking, he calmly withdrew his gaze and focused on the ritual again. Unlike the previous 3 stages, he, who was in the 4th stage, was no longer as skillful as before. Wanting to completely fuse the 7 attributes of yin, yang, 5 elements, and chakra was essentially a heaven-defying act. This was because the different attributes of chakra would naturally repel each other. It was already very difficult to fuse 2 or 3 of them. If he wanted to completely fuse all 7 attributes, not only would it require an unimaginable amount of chakra, but it would also require superb skills and a calm heart. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, I'd like to thank all the students who gifted me today. Thank you all. This chapter says that it's temporarily blocked. You can send it, but you can't see it. It seems like it will only be displayed on the 5th. You can send it first and read it again on the 5th. Chapter 1347. In the Land of Fire. A twisting whirlpool suddenly appeared, and a figure wearing a mask and a cloak leisurely walked out of the whirlpool. Obviously, this figure is Obsidian Shinobi. In fact, after the last Mist War, Kakashi already knew Obsidian Shinobi's identity, plus Uchiha Madara with the impure earth form has also appeared in the shinobi world, so at this time, there is no need for him to continue pretending to be Uchiha Madara. It's just that he has been wearing the mask for a long time, and he is used to hiding himself under the mask, or rather, he not only needs the mask to cover his appearance, but also some kind of spiritual protection. Because the moment he awakened the Kamui, he relied on escape. Only by wearing the mask can he forget his identity as Uchiha Obsidian Shinobi and put himself in the shoes of the Akatsuki behind the scenes. After landing, Obsidian glanced at the direction of the Mai village. At first, he thought that with the 6 paths of pain under his control and the several Kage with the impure earth form under Zetsu's control, it would be enough to capture the Mai village and completely raze the village that carried his hope and gave him despair. He didn't expect that the 3 kids, Naruto, Sasuke, and Neji, would intervene and forcibly stabilize the defeat of the ninja coalition, and then Orochimaru's Edo reincarnation, Hashirama, Naidame, and Naidame turned the situation around. Humph! Obsidian snorted and retracted his gaze. At this moment, except for the leader of Amatsukami Yama, he doesn't put anyone else in his eyes, even the first generation who is known as the god of shinobi, because as a Jubi's Jinchuriki, he has already stepped into the 6-path realm, and only Yama of Amatsukami, who is also a sage, can fight him. If there is anything else worthy of his attention now, it would be the 9 Tails and Kuroto Ningxi who are hiding in the shinobi world, as well as the Tenseigan that suddenly awakened not long ago. And the fact that Hyuga Ningxi awakened the Tenseigan also confirmed that the Tenseigan evolved from Byakugan. In other words, the true identity of Yama is either Otsutsuki on the moon or Mai's Hyuga clan, because only these 2 clans possess the Byakugan. Soon, Obsidian closed his eyes and sensed. With his perception, he once again confirmed that 9 Tails was far away in the polar region. However, because they were too far away, it was difficult for him to determine their exact location. He could only roughly sense a direction. But for someone who has mastered the space-time ninjutsu, this distance is nothing. However, just as the Obsidian was about to follow the direction of the signal, he suddenly realized that the signal had suddenly disappeared, so he was taken aback. Then, he suddenly turned around and looked suspiciously at my village. On the battlefield outside my village. Rumble. The 6 paths of pain with the 10 Tails chakra and the 1st, 2nd, and 4th generations were engaged in a fierce battle with the previous generations of Naruto, and the whole scene was extremely chaotic. The screeching sounds of the jade-tailed beasts tearing through the air, the roars of the spiritual beasts, and the continuous sounds of explosions rang out incessantly. Even though it was already night time, the night sky was still filled with lightning, thunder, and flames. As far as the eye could see, it was a scene of doomsday. Bang! At this moment, with a burst of white smoke, Naruto appeared in the sea of wildly growing trees. 1 second ago, he was still on the ice field, fighting with Otsutsuki samurai with a dazzling golden sword in his hand. The next second, he appeared in the sea of trees that covered the sky. Such a contrast made Naruto's face dull, and he couldn't react at all. Swoosh! Seeing that Naruto was about to be swallowed by the sea of trees, a figure suddenly flashed and appeared in front of Naruto, and immediately disappeared into the sea of trees with Naruto. Father? I'm back in the village? Looking at the 4 generations Naruto in front of him with the impure soil body, Naruto immediately reacted. Yes. The 4 generations who saved Naruto from the battlefield nodded. Kakashi quickly asked, Naruto, where did your teacher take you just now? Naruto glanced around at this time and found that in addition to his father, the 4 generations Naruto, Kakashi, Gai, Asuma, Kurenai, Mute, Richa, Uchiha, Fuyue, and other jonins were watching him. He suddenly replied nervously, It seems to be the Snow Country. Snow Country? Everyone was taken aback. No one expected that Hyojin would take Naruto to the remote Snow Country. For generations Naruto pondered for a moment and asked, Where did the 5 generations take you for? Hearing his father's question, Naruto suddenly became entangled. He was actually confused about Hyojin's plan in the Snow Country, but he vaguely knew that his teacher seemed to be carrying out an earth-shattering ceremony. And he wasn't sure if he could say it, after all. His teacher did it so secretly, Even an idiot could see that his teacher didn't want the ceremony to be known. Looking at the entangled face of Naruto, for generations suddenly smiled and said, "If it involves the secret of the 5 generations, then there is no need to say it." Naruto breathed a sigh of relief and looked gratefully at the 4 generations Naruto. Kakashi on the side immediately felt a trace of abnormality, because listening to the tone of 4 generations Naruto, 4 generations Naruto seems to know the details of Hyuujin very well. Mute said in a deep voice at this time, "No matter what, we must ensure the safety of Naruto." All the Jonins nodded in unison. Naruto asked with some doubt, "What happened?" Kakashi replied, "Not long ago, we received news that the Mizukage of the 3-tailed Jinchuriki and the 7-tailed Jinchuriki were attacked by the Akatsuki, and all the tailed beasts in their bodies were taken away." Naruto was shocked. "What?" Kakashi shook his head gloomily. "The Akatsuki's target is still the tailed beasts. In fact, the protection of the Jinchuriki of the 5 great shinobi villages has not been relaxed, but the sudden 4th Shinobi World War involved too much energy and combat power of the 5 great shinobi villages, so the Akatsuki organization easily took advantage of the loopholes." Asuma said anxiously, "Damn it, why hasn't Amatsukami made a move yet? Even if the sage wants to keep an eye on the Jubi of the Akatsuki organization, Suijin, Kazuki, Xidagarba, and the others should also make a move. Why only Homasubi has appeared so far?" Naruto replied subconsciously, "They are all in the land of snow." In an instant, everyone's eyes converged on Naruto, and Kakashi asked seriously, "Naruto, what did you just say? Amatsukami is in the land of snow?" Seeing that he has already let the cat out of the bag, Naruto nodded. "Well, they are all there to deal with a very powerful enemy. Without this chapter, I'll take a break for 1 chapter, that's the only chapter for today. In addition, I would like to thank the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you all. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.